Chapter 1059. Fortunately, the middle-aged honorable master from the palace of Ares only glanced at Lin Xian and did not pay much attention to him. The green-robed elder heaved a sigh of relief. Lin Xian's identity was too sensitive and he could not expose it easily. Otherwise, the other party would definitely go crazy. Lin Xian was also excited when he saw the green-robed elder. The green-robed elder had previously told him that his father was in the palace of Ares. Hence, he was eager to know about his father's whereabouts. "Senior, please hold on. I have something to ask," Lin Xian said to the green-robed elder. The green-robed elder nodded and stopped in his tracks. After the big shots had left, Lin Xian asked quickly, "Senior, how is my father? And what's the situation in the palace of Ares? Can I go there?" The green-robed elder hesitated and said slowly, "You can't go there now. As for your father's condition, don't worry. There's no problem." The green-robed elder thought for a while and decided not to reveal Lin Xian's true identity. Beside him, Hall Master Wan and the auctioneer elder took a deep look at Lin Xian and said in a deep voice, "All right, you don't have to worry about the palace of Ares. There's something you need to do now." "Something? What is it?" Lin Xian asked curiously. "It's about that place," Hall Master Wan said. "That place?" Upon hearing that, Lin Xian's pupils constricted and he asked curiously, "What is that place?" "It's a secret land. There are countless treasures in it, but it's also extremely dangerous. You can say that opportunities and challenges coexist. Are you willing to go to such a secret land?" Hall Master Wan asked. Although they wanted Lin Xian to go, the prerequisite was that Lin Xian had to agree to it himself. Countless treasures. Lin Xian took a deep breath and his eyes were filled with excitement. What he lacked the most now was treasures. Now, there was actually a mystic realm that was filled with treasures. This was extremely good news for him. "What is the danger?" Lin Xian asked again. Although the heaven and earth treasures were good, he still had to figure out the situation before he dared to enter. There are two aspects in total. The first is the threat from the other factions. There might be a conflict with the other factions. The second is the threat of the secret realm itself. After all, it's an ancient secret realm. Although there are many treasures in there, there are corresponding formations. That's an extremely powerful ancient forbidden formation. Its power is unimaginable. That's why the process of obtaining the treasure is extremely dangerous. Ancient formation restriction. Lin Xian was shocked when he heard that. However, he was secretly delighted. This was because the dark red divine dragon was an expert in array formations. It should have no problem breaking array formations. Therefore, without much thought, Lin Xian nodded in agreement. "All right. Since you've agreed, then prepare patiently. We'll inform you when we're done discussing the details." Hall Master Wan said, "It won't take too long. It'll only take about a month." "A month?" Lin Xian nodded. Fortunately, he had enough time to prepare. Then Lin Xian left with his men. Hall Master Wan frowned. That place was extremely dangerous. Moreover, it was opened in advance. There might be something unusual inside. "Have you really decided to let Lin Xian enter?" Hearing that, the green-robed elder sighed. "No one wants to take this risk. However, this opportunity only comes once in 100 years. If we miss this opportunity, we might have to wait another 100 years. No one can wait that long, and Lin Xian is even more so. If he's an ordinary martial artist, then it's fine. However, his identity is too special. I'm afraid he won't be able to hide it for long before those people find out. At that time, he'll be in great danger. Therefore, the opening of the secret realm is the best opportunity for him to increase his strength. Although it's dangerous, it's better than being killed by others." Hearing that, the few important figures fell silent. "All right, then it's settled. How about your side? Those people won't let this matter rest until they get the king tablet. Do you want us to send some people to escort you back?" Hall Master Wan asked. "No need. I have a way to deal with it." The green-robed elder smiled and said. Looking at his confident expression, Hall Master Wan didn't say anything else. After all, the green-robed elder wasn't a weakling. He was an expert from the Palace of War that was as famous as the Immortal Martial Academy. While the two of them were discussing, the important figures of the other forces also left Wind-Seeking City and returned to their respective sects to discuss this matter. The opening of the secret realm in advance was extremely shocking to them. They guessed that something unimaginable must have happened inside. However, the things inside were too tempting. They couldn't resist at all. Therefore, they could only send their disciples. However, they had to discuss what kind of disciples to send. While these important figures were discussing urgently, Lin Xian wasn't idle either. Since it was confirmed that they would enter the secret realm in a month, he was preparing urgently during this period. Other things couldn't be improved in a short period of time, but things like elixirs could be refined. Therefore, during this period Lin Xian had been preparing all kinds of elixirs to deal with the dangerous secret realm. However, while Lin Xian was busy in seclusion, another big event happened in Wind-Seeking City. Now, all the martial artists in Wind-Seeking City were extremely excited because they witnessed the rise of a young alchemy grandmaster. This young man was naturally Shintianyu. He stayed in Wind-Seeking City and didn't leave. Moreover, during these few days he displayed his powerful alchemy skills, which shocked everyone. One should know that all the forces in Wind-Seeking City were still there. These people were the elites of the blood field. However, they were still deeply shocked by Shintianyu's alchemy skills. The alchemists of the major forces were so shocked that they all went to visit Shintianyu to ask for advice. Even a 7th-grade alchemist went to exchange pointers with him. This made everyone even more shocked. One should know that those alchemists were all terrifying figures. There were even alchemy grandmasters. However, at this moment they were all asking for advice from a young man. This was really incredible. For a time, Shintianyu's reputation spread throughout Wind-Seeking City. At the same time, the news of the competition between Shintianyu and Lin Xian spread. Suddenly, everyone was extremely excited. The disciples of the Shin family and the allied forces of the Shin family secretly spread the news that Lin Xian was afraid of Shintianyu and didn't dare to go out and meet people. At first, people didn't believe it because Lin Xian's strength was not weak. However, gradually they began to doubt it because they didn't see Lin Xian at all these days. They didn't even see him at the celestial martial auction. Chapter 1060. Didn't he refine the purple spirit pill? With such a miraculous pill, why would he be afraid of competing with others? What do you know? I heard that the purple spirit pill was not refined by him. It was refined by an elder of the Celestial Martial Arts Academy. It was just under his name. Really? So there is such a thing. It's possible. After all, the purple spirit pill is too miraculous. How could a young man refine it? I'm afraid that even Shintianyu can't refine such a pill. Yeah, I didn't believe it at first. But now that Lin Xian hasn't shown up for many days, it might be true. In Wind-Seeking City, countless martial artists were talking about it. Elixirs were resources that martial artists couldn't do without. Therefore, every martial artist was paying attention to it. Therefore, all kinds of news were flying around. Although I don't know if the purple spirit pill was refined by Lin Xian, I heard that when Lin Xian was in Crimson Crescent City, he was invited by a grade 7 alchemist. This is enough to prove his strength and talent. Otherwise, the grade 7 alchemist wouldn't have invited him. However, such a talented young alchemist didn't dare to accept the challenge. How strong is Shintianyu? Someone exclaimed. Of course, Shintianyu is the genius of the Shin family. He's a true grade 7 alchemist. Do you know what a grade 7 alchemist is? Look at those grade 7 alchemists now and you'll understand. Without a few hundred years, it's impossible to achieve it. However, Shintianyu became a grade 7 alchemist at such a young age. That's unbelievable. Many people exclaimed. In Wind-Seeking City, many people were talking about Shintianyu. Although Shintianyu didn't make many moves, he had deeply impressed everyone. In an instant, his name resounded throughout Wind-Seeking City. Lin Xian naturally didn't know about this. He had been in seclusion to prepare for the secret territory. However, he didn't forget about the competition with Shintianyu. After all, it was a few 6,000-year-old spiritual herbs. He wouldn't miss out on such a good thing. Therefore, when he felt that it was about time, he opened his eyes and exited his seclusion. However, when he came out he wasn't happy. Because he heard the streets and alleys speaking ill of him. Immediately, Lin Xian found Wang Li and the others and asked them what was going on. He had only been in seclusion for a few days. How did the world change so drastically? Wang Li was also very angry. He quickly said, "Older brother Xian, in the past few days when you were in seclusion, the entire Wind-Seeking City was talking about your competition with Shintianyu. Not only that, but the disciples of the Shin family and the Divine Bird Palace are also adding fuel to the fire in the dark, specifically discrediting them, which is why the current situation is like this. We wanted to do it a long time ago, but without your permission we didn't dare." Wang Li gritted his teeth. After hearing this, Lin Xian stroked his chin. So that's what happened. No wonder the entire Wind-Seeking City was in such a situation. However, he was not worried because his purple spirit pill was not fake. He had refined it himself. Therefore, no matter what people said, they could not change this fact. However, the other party's actions infuriated him. He was not a master who would be bullied. There's no need to do it, but since the other party provoked us, we have to respond. Lin Xian said in a deep voice. Wang Li, follow me out. Older brother Xian, where are we going? Wang Li asked. Accept the challenge. Lin Xian's voice was sonorous. Hearing this, Wang Li was excited. He had been displeased with those people for a long time. Unfortunately, without Lin Xian's order, he could not do it. But now, Lin Xian was going to take the initiative to attack. How could he not be excited? Older brother Xian, I can't help it. Wang Li shouted excitedly. Then he followed Lin Xian out. When Lin Xian appeared in Wind-Seeking City, everyone was stunned. They were shocked as if they had seen a ghost. Because after these few days of discrediting, everyone thought that Lin Xian was a coward and did not dare to accept the challenge. But now Lin Xian appeared. What's going on? Didn't he not dare to come out? Why did he come out now? Many people were confused. Who knows? Is he here to accept the challenge? That's impossible. Didn't they say that he's only a 6th grade alchemist? With this level, he's courting death against Shen Tianyu. But he's walking towards the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion. That's where he and Shen Tianyu will fight. Everyone was talking about it excitedly. It was too shocking. They thought that the matter was over, but they did not expect such a thing to happen again. At this time, Wang Li snorted coldly. What are you suspecting? Are you suspecting our older brother Xian? Let me tell you, our older brother Xian has been in seclusion for the past few days because he's studying the pill formulas. It's not some lousy rumor. Now we're here to accept the challenge. That's you. You were shouting so happily just now. I advise you to tell that Shen Tianyu to protect his knees. Protect his knees? Everyone was confused. Because in front of older brother Xian he has to kneel. Wang Li's voice was loud and clear. Whoosh, hearing this, everyone was in an uproar. They were all extremely shocked as if they couldn't believe their own ears. What did I hear? Lin Xian is fighting back. Damn, this is the rhythm of a fight. This is big news, big news. I told you Lin Xian can't be afraid. You didn't believe me, but now you believe me. Look at how confident he is. Did he really come up with a new pill formula? Everyone was excited, boiling, and completely confused. The rumor about Lin Xian discredited was self-defeating. Didn't you say that he was a coward and did not dare to accept the challenge? But now he had come out and accepted the challenge in a high-profile manner. He was very confident. Suddenly, the news spread like a gust of wind and quickly spread throughout Windy City. Go and see, Lin Xian is out. What, Lin Xian is out? You're not dreaming, are you? How dare he come out? What do you know? He's heading to the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion to prepare for the competition. Really? Damn. I have to go and see. In an instant, the entire Windy City was shocked. Countless warriors moved to watch. This also created a strange scene. Lin Xian was like an elder of a king family. He was surrounded by everyone like the stars surrounding the moon. Brother Lin, are you really going to fight? Someone did not believe and quickly asked. I say, why are you still asking this question? Wang Li said impatiently. Can't you see? Of course, our older brother Xian is going to fight. Also, hurry up and tell Shen Tianyu to prepare a 6,000-year-old elixir. We don't want it if it's missing a leaf. Wang Li's words shocked everyone. They looked at Lin Xian's confident look. It did not seem fake at all. Now, everyone believed that Lin Xian was really going to fight. Chapter 1061. The Heavenly Elixir Pavilion was the largest elixir trading place in Wenfeng City. They had everything from ordinary elixirs to 7th-grade elixirs. Could be said that everyone knew about the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion. At this moment, the people of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion all came out to welcome them. They naturally knew that the two of them were going to fight here, but they did not object. Instead, they were very happy. This was because such a thing was rare and both of them were shocking geniuses. Shen Tianyu was a disciple of a royal family and an alchemy genius. He had become a 7th-grade alchemist at such a young age. It could be said that he was very powerful and his future was limitless. Lin Xian was even more amazing. It was said that the purple spirit pill was refined by him. Moreover, he was the owner of the Immortal Martial Auction. The Immortal Martial Auction, there was probably no one who didn't know about this auction. The first auction had gathered countless elders of the big forces and even sent out a heaven-defying item like the King's Tablet. It could be said that the Immortal Martial Auction was the top auction in the Jianghu continent. And the young man in front of them was the owner of the auction. Therefore they did not dare to underestimate him and all came out to welcome him. Under the welcoming of the elders, Lin Xian entered the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion. The Heavenly Elixir Pavilion had specially cleared out a courtyard for this competition. The courtyard was very spacious and connected into one piece. Inside there were overlapping rockery and waterfalls. The scenery was pleasant and it was like a fairyland. Lin Xian walked into the courtyard and immediately narrowed his eyes. He naturally did not pay attention to the scenery. Moreover, something else had attracted his attention. With his outstanding soul power, Lin Xian sensed that there was a fire vein under the courtyard. Although it was not as good as the flaming mountain, it was still extraordinary. The fire vein contained rich fire elements and could help alchemists increase the efficiency of refining elixirs. It could be said that it was very important. He did not expect that there would be a fire vein in the courtyard. As expected of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion, it was indeed extraordinary. Then he focused his gaze and carefully sensed it. Then he took a step forward. His footwork was very strange. It was not a straight line at all. It was as if he was stepping on something. The ordinary martial artists were puzzled and did not understand. However, the elders of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion were shocked and their faces were dull. They could not help but be shocked because they knew that there was a fire vein underground. But now, every step Lin Xian took was on the fire vein. Moreover, it was the place with the densest fire vein. Lin Xian's footsteps had completely shocked the elders of the Heavenly Dan Pavilion. Now they absolutely believed that the previous rumors were purposely slandered. The youth in front of them was definitely incomparably powerful. However, they didn't know if they could defeat Tianyu because Tianyu was also extraordinary. Moreover, they had interacted with Tianyu before. His attainments in alchemy were even higher than theirs. Therefore, they had no way of guessing the outcome of this battle. Everything would only be known after the battle. After taking a few steps, Lin Xian stopped and stood with his hands behind his back with a smile on his face. This was because the place he was at now was the place where the fire element was the strongest. Seeing that Lin Xian was ready, Wang Li immediately said, "Why hasn't Tianyu come yet? Is he afraid of our brother Xian's strength? You don't dare to accept my challenge?" Previously, those people had maliciously slandered Lin Xian, which made Wang Li and the others very angry. Now that there was an opportunity, they would not miss it. When the surrounding people heard this, the corners of their mouths twitched. Obviously, Tianyu was retaliating against those malicious rumors from a few days ago. Soon, the news of Lin Xian's arrival at the Heavenly Dan Pavilion spread quickly. More and more people gathered at the Heavenly Dan Pavilion. The entire courtyard was filled with people. Lin Xian stood at the place where the fire vein was the strongest and waited quietly. He knew that Tianyu would definitely come after hearing the news. Sure enough, not long after, there was a sudden commotion behind him. The crowd spread to both sides like a tide, forcibly forming a passage. Then a group of people swaggered out of the passage. The person in front was naturally Tianyu. He was handsome and had a conceited smile on his face as he strode over quickly. Next to him was the cold level 6 alchemist and Xin Yulong. Behind them were the other disciples of the Xin family. The group of people majestically entered the courtyard. Then the cold young man looked at Lin Xian and sneered. "You really dared to come. I have to say that you're very bold but also very stupid. How dare you go against our brother Tianyu? You're going to die. Today I'll expose your alchemy skills in front of everyone and let everyone know what kind of trash you are." Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. They did not expect Tianyu to come so quickly and in such a domineering manner. It seemed that there would be an exciting alchemy battle here. When Wang Li heard Tianyu's voice, he snorted and said, "I think you should be the ones who are afraid. What? Are you ready to kneel down?" Seeing that Lin Xian was not backing down, the crowd finally boiled over. The alchemy competition had not yet begun, but the two sides were already mocking each other. It seemed that when the battle began, they would definitely not hold back. This also meant that the battle would definitely be exciting. "How is it? Have you prepared the 6,000-year-old spiritual herbs? You must take good care of them. If there's a single leaf, we won't accept it." "Of course, we'll take good care of the 6,000-year-old spiritual herbs. But you don't have to worry about that because you won't have the chance to see them." The cold young man sneered. Tianyu, on the other hand, looked proud and aloof. He did not care about this quarrel at all. Instead, his eyes were like lightning as he quickly scanned the surroundings. Then he frowned. This was because he also felt the underground fire vein. However, what made him unhappy was that Lin Xian was standing in the best spot of the fire vein. He could not tolerate this. In his opinion, this place should belong to him. Lin Xian was not qualified to own this place. Then, with a trace of coldness at the corner of his mouth, he quickly walked up. Get lost. I want this place. Shen Tianyu was very domineering. He did not take Lin Xian seriously at all. Lin Xian sneered. You want it? Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that? Lin Xian did not have a good impression of this person in front of him. He had to teach this self-righteous and arrogant guy a lesson in order to intimidate him. Kid, I'm warning you. You don't deserve this position. You're an insult to this place by standing here. Seeing that the other party was unwilling to back down, Shen Tianyu's face darkened. How ridiculous. If I don't deserve it, do you think you deserve this place? Do you really think you're so great? Lin Xian said coldly. The crowd was puzzled. They could not understand why the two of them were fighting for a position. Chapter 1062. You're not alchemists, so you don't know that there's a very dense fire vein underneath. And Lin Xian is standing at the best spot in the fire vein. Refining pills there will achieve the best results. An elder explained. After hearing that, the crowd finally understood. No wonder the two of them were fighting for a spot. However, it seemed that Shen Tianyu was at a disadvantage because it seemed that Lin Xian would never give up that spot. In front of them, the two of them were confronting each other. Lin Xian was not afraid at all. On the other hand, Shen Tianyu was furious. His face was extremely cold and his eyes were filled with anger. Get lost. He finally could not stand it anymore. He threw a punch in front of him, trying to send Lin Xian flying. Seeing that, the crowd was shocked. They did not expect Shen Tianyu to suddenly attack. However, Lin Xian sneered disdainfully. He stretched out his palm and waved it in front of him. Boom. A low sound was heard, and a terrifying energy spread out in all directions. You want to fight? I'm afraid you've got the wrong person. Lin Xian sneered. Then his arm shook and a huge force surged out of his body again. Boom. In the next moment, Shen Tianyu's expression changed because he was knocked back. His body swayed and he took 3 steps back. His entire arm was slightly numb. He stared fiercely at Lin Xian. His eyes were burning with anger. He did not expect Lin Xian's combat strength to be so terrifying that he was knocked back. The crowd was also shocked. It seemed that in terms of combat strength, Shen Tianyu was far inferior to Lin Xian. At that moment, Shen Yulong also quickly stepped forward and whispered to Shen Tianyu, "Don't fight with him. His combat strength is terrifying." Hearing that, Shen Tianyu's face darkened, but he still nodded coldly. He had already felt the power of that punch. At that moment he snorted. So what if his combat strength is strong? We're competing in alchemy skills this time. So what if you've taken the best spot? I'll let you know what true strength is. Shen Tianyu's expression was cold. He no longer fought for the best spot. Instead, he quickly scanned the surroundings looking for other spots. Not long after, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. With a flash of his feet, he arrived at a place opposite Lin Xian. The fire element there was also abnormally strong, second only to Lin Xian's location. Kid, you'll know in a moment that everything is futile in front of absolute strength. Shen Tianyu smiled coldly. I'll let you know what true strength is. In the face of absolute strength, everything you do is futile. Shen Tianyu said arrogantly. Lin Xian also said in a cold voice, an alchemist who can't even get the most advantageous position to refine pills, and you still want to talk about absolute strength. I think you don't have any strength at all. You don't deserve to say these words. There are many factors involved in alchemy, and the flame factor is especially important. It can even affect the success or failure of alchemy. You can't even control such an important factor, and you still want to talk about strength with me. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Lin Xian's voice was cold, and there was a trace of disdain in the corners of his mouth. You have a sharp tongue. You'll know how short-sighted your knowledge is. Shen Tianyu's face was dark, and there was a strong murderous intent. His opponent was so hateful that he dared to question his strength. He decided to teach him a lesson later and let him know what a real alchemy genius was. That's right. What's the use of talking? Let's see if you have the ability to fight. The gloomy youth of the Shen family also clamored. It's no fun to bicker. Since it's an alchemy competition, let's see what level of alchemy you have. The disciples of the Divine Bird Palace also sneered. The surrounding warriors were very excited because they would soon be able to see a peak alchemy competition. This was definitely a rare scene. In that case, let's start. The competition is very simple. You can refine pills at will. Whoever has a higher grade and better effect will win. Shen Tianyu said, "Prepare the purple spirit pill formula because it will soon be mine." Hearing this, Lin Xian had a strange look. He asked in a low voice, Are you sure you want to compete like this? What, you don't dare? Shin Tianyu sneered. It's not that I don't dare, but I have no chance of winning at all. Lin Xian said slowly, if I use the purple spirit pill, I really can't think of what kind of pill you can use to compete with me. He was telling the truth. Originally he thought that they should refine the same kind of pill and see whose effect was better. He did not expect Shin Tianyu to compete with him on any kind of pill. Wasn't he looking for death? His purple spirit pill was a pill that could repair martial spirits. It was a pill that countless venerables went crazy for. It could be said that it was unique in the Jianghu continent because no one had heard of a pill with the same effect. Therefore he really could not think of what kind of pill Shin Tianyu could use to compete with his purple spirit pill. Refine the purple spirit pill? Shin Tianyu was stunned. He then sneered disdainfully, if you can really refine the purple spirit pill, then I'll admit defeat. He said this directly because in his opinion, it was impossible for Shin Tianyu to refine the purple spirit pill. That was because it was a 7th grade pill, and it was one of the most outstanding 7th grade pills. With Shin Tianyu's status as a 6th grade alchemist, how could he refine it? Therefore he did not think that Lin Xian could refine it. Shin Tianyu was different. He was a genuine 7th grade alchemist. This time he had carefully prepared for the competition. Therefore it wasn't difficult for him to refine a 7th grade medicinal pill. As long as he could refine it, he would definitely be able to defeat Lin Xian. When Lin Xian heard Shin Tianyu's words, his expression became even more strange. Since Shin Tianyu was looking for death, he could only send him on his way. Alright, you said it yourself. When the time comes, don't blame me for not reminding you. Lin Xian kindly reminded him again. Cut the crap. Let's begin. Shin Tianyu snorted coldly. Then he touched his storage ring with his finger. A crimson alchemy cauldron appeared in the air. The alchemy cauldron was crimson. As soon as it appeared, it exuded a monstrous heat. There were mysterious lines on it, forming a flame pattern that burned fiercely. This cauldron? Could it be the Shin family's Naming Ignis cauldron? The elder of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion was shocked. Yes, it is indeed the Naming Ignis cauldron. I didn't expect him to have this treasure cauldron. This is a half-earth grade treasure. Another elder exclaimed. What? A half-earth grade treasure. When the crowd heard this, they were shocked and looked at the sky in disbelief. They did not expect that the crimson alchemy cauldron to be a half-earth grade treasure. This was too shocking. One had to know that a half-earth step treasure was an incomparably rare existence. They hadn't expected Shin Tianyu to be so generous. Chapter 1063. Seeing the shocked and envious eyes of the people around him, Shin Tianyu smiled proudly. His Nanmingli fire cauldron was indeed a half-earth ranked treasure, and it was specially given to him by his family. Now using it to deal with Lin Xian would be a piece of cake. Could even crush him. Then he manipulated the Nanmingli fire cauldron and looked at Lin Xian provocatively. He wanted to see what kind of cauldron Shin Tianyu could take out. If the grade of his cauldron was too low, he would directly use the pressure of the Nanmingli fire cauldron to intimidate him, and it might even cause his alchemy to fail. He was disdainful. In front of his absolute strength, what could Lin Xian do? The disciples of the Shin family and the Divine Bird Palace looked at Lin Xian with a sneer, their eyes cold. Lin Xian naturally knew what they meant, but he shook his head slightly with a touch of disdain. Shin Tianyu dared to compete with him in terms of cauldron quality. His Thousand Beast cauldron was an earth-ranked treasure, and it was a complete earth-ranked treasure. It was not something that could be compared with a half-earth-ranked treasure. If he wanted to, he could even suppress his opponent's cauldron in an instant. But he would not do so. If the news of the Thousand Beast cauldron leaked out, the whole world would be alarmed. At that time, those kings might also take action. If that was the case, he could not resist at all. Therefore, before he had the ability to protect himself, he would not leak this information. However, the Thousand Beast cauldron was still useful to him. Because of Zero, he could hide the aura of the Thousand Beast cauldron. Therefore, he only needed to maintain the aura of the Thousand Beast cauldron at the level of a half-earth ranked treasure, and then take it out to use. It would not arouse suspicion. After quickly communicating with Zero, Lin Xian also flicked his finger, and suddenly a black light appeared in the void. Seeing this scene, everyone looked up and craned their necks to see. The black light in the void suddenly stopped and spun quickly. Then a small black cauldron appeared in the void. The black cauldron floated in the air, emitting a similar aura. However, unlike the fiery aura from before, this black cauldron's aura was somewhat cold. What kind of pill cauldron is this? Why does it have such a cold and gloomy aura? Everyone looked at each other. As for the Heavenly Pill Pavilion's elder, he was shocked once again. Relying on their outstanding soul force, they could clearly sense that the aura emitted by the black cauldron in the void was equally terrifying. It had also reached the level of a half-Earth rank artifact. Soon after, their hearts trembled fiercely. They had never imagined that Lin Xian would also possess a half-Earth step artifact-grade pill cauldron. On the other side, Shen Tianyu's face was gloomy and even a little ferocious. He stared at the black cauldron in the sky, his body trembling slightly. Despicable, this is too despicable. He was driven mad and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Shen Tianyu was about to go crazy. He really couldn't imagine that his opponent would be able to take out a half-Earth step treasure cauldron. This was completely out of his expectations. Originally, he wanted to use the pressure of the Nanming Ignis cauldron in his hand to frighten his opponent. But now it seemed impossible. Because the black cauldron that his opponent had taken out was no weaker than his. And somehow, when he faced the black cauldron, there was an instinctive fear in his heart. Damn it, how could this guy have such a good thing in his hand? Not only Shen Tianyu, but the disciples of the Shen family were also shocked. Their faces were ferocious, and they wished they could rush up and snatch the black cauldron back. The disciples of the Divine Bird Palace also looked terrible. They stared fiercely at Lin Xian and then comforted themselves. It's okay. Even if that guy took out a cauldron of the same level, so what? His strength is not as good as Brother Tianyu's. In the end he will still lose. Even if the conditions are the same, his strength is not enough. He can't win. The disciples of the Shen family also regained their composure and shouted again. Seeing the changes in everyone's faces, Lin Xian was expressionless, but he sneered in his heart. A half-Earth step treasure? These people were really silly and cute. They actually thought that Shen Tianyu could win this competition. It seemed that he had to hit them hard in the face to wake them up. Shaking his head slightly, Lin Xian ignored these people. Instead, he flicked his fingers and began to take out spiritual herbs to refine. Seeing this, Shen Tianyu snorted coldly. Then he focused his mind and calmed his qi, and a terrifying light burst out from his eyes. The next moment, he waved his hand and groups of spiritual herbs appeared in the air, floating with his soul power. Seeing the two of them refining elixirs, the surrounding people also quieted down. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. They quietly watched this scene, and their hearts were filled with excitement. The alchemists in the field stared at the two of them, not missing a single movement. Because these two people were both top-notch alchemists, watching this kind of competition would definitely give them great inspiration. The elders of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion stared at Lin Xian. There was no other way because Lin Xian was refining the Purple Spirit Elixir. It was the most popular elixir now. If they could learn a thing or two from Shen Tianyu's refining process, or find some clues, it would be an extremely important discovery for them. Therefore, these elders were as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They stared at Lin Xian without blinking, and did not even miss a single movement. But soon they were disappointed because Lin Xian showed them the most common process. Some of the key processes as well as the carving of the pill veins were all hidden. They could not find out at all unless they forcefully used their soul power to break it. But if they did that, they would not just be observing but directly robbing. This was a big taboo for alchemists, so they would not do it. Moreover, Lin Xian had the Immortal Martial Academy behind him. Even if they had 10 times the courage, they would not dare to forcefully investigate. Therefore, they could only watch helplessly, but their hearts were incomparably frantic. Although they could not see the most important part of refining the elixir, they were still incomparably shocked. It was because the methods Lin Xian displayed were truly too exquisite. Every single move he made was executed perfectly, and it caused even these seniors to sigh in admiration. Is this really a youth? Everyone was puzzled because to reach this level of attainment, it was impossible to achieve without a few hundred years. Genius, he is definitely a shocking genius. This Lin Xian's talent was definitely not inferior to Shen Tianyu's. He wondered what kind of person Lin Xian's master was. To actually be able to train such a peerless genius? Many alchemists discussed animatedly, abnormally envious. On the other hand, the Shen clan disciples' faces were dark because the better Lin Xian's performance was, the more uncomfortable they felt. Damn it, why is this guy so powerful? Impossible, he definitely won't succeed in refining it. Chapter 1064. He was also a grade 6 alchemist, but compared to Lin Xian he was nothing. That was because Shen Tianyu's methods and experience were too exquisite. He could not be compared to Shen Tianyu. He had even surpassed Shen Tianyu. Shen Tianyu's face was gloomy. Although he was refining the elixir, he was aware of what was going on outside with his soul. When he found out about Lin Xian's skillful and exquisite methods, his face suddenly became gloomy. Not only that, but a feeling of panic suddenly arose in his heart because the strength that Lin Xian displayed was not inferior to his at all. If it were not for the restriction of his soul power, Shen Tianyu would have been a grade 7 alchemist. However, that was enough to shock him. Shen Tianyu knew that although he was also part of the younger generation, he was already in his 30s. Looking at Lin Xian's appearance, he was at most in his 20s. There was a difference of more than 10 years between the two of them. For a genius, the improvement that could be achieved in more than 10 years was extremely terrifying. In other words, if the two of them were the same age, he would definitely not be able to beat Lin Xian. That was because when he was in his 20s, he could not reach Lin Xian's level. Damn it. Shen Tianyu's heart was ferocious. I will not lose. The elixir formula of the purple spirit pill must be mine. In the end, he directly withdrew the last trace of his soul and no longer paid attention to the outside world. Instead, he focused on refining the elixir in his hands. Without saying much, Shen Tianyu's strength was amazing. He was indeed a young genius at the Grandmaster level. Under such circumstances, he was still able to quickly calm his mind and focus on refining pills. This point alone was enough to instantly kill a group of older generation figures. Lin Xian, on the other hand, was completely oblivious to all of this. He had been completely immersed in the process of refining the pill. At that moment, he was completely immersed in the process of refining the elixir and fell into a very ethereal state. It was not the first time he had refined the purple spirit pill, so he was very familiar with it. Moreover, with the 1,000-beast cauldron in his hands, refining the purple spirit pill was not a challenge for him at all. However, he still carried on meticulously because during this process, he was able to discover his own shortcomings and improve on them. Time flowed by, and in the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. During this half a day, no one left. They didn't even move. They were like petrified statues quietly watching. Because the battle between the two of them was really too exciting, even those martial artists who didn't understand alchemy were convinced. Because all methods were connected, the other party's performance in alchemy was the same principle when it came to martial arts. Therefore, even though they did not understand alchemy, they understood this logic. And those alchemists were even more shocked, because the alchemy of these two people had long since completely surpassed them, reaching an inconceivable level. If they didn't know the exact age of these two people, they would have suspected that these two people were two old monsters in disguise. However, just as everyone was exclaiming in shock, Lin Xian suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was as sharp as a divine arrow. Then he let out a low roar and quickly waved his finger, sending streams of soul power into the 1,000-beast cauldron. What? Seeing this scene, those medicinal pill elders were all stupefied. They naturally knew what Lin Xian's action meant, but because they knew, they were extremely shocked. This action meant that the refining of the pill was about to be completed, but this was simply impossible. One had to know that the other party was refining a 7th grade pill. And it was an extremely special purple spirit pill among 7th grade pills. It had only been half a day and he was already done? The elders couldn't believe it because according to their common sense, even if it was an ordinary 7th grade pill, those powerful 7th grade alchemists would need about a day or so. How could someone be like Lin Xian refining it in half a day? Around them, those alchemists were also shocked. Each of them widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. Humph, to be able to finish refining so quickly, it definitely isn't a 7th grade pill. The gloomy young man from the Shen family said coldly. Maybe it's ruined. Many discussions sounded. In any case, no one was optimistic about Lin Xian's chances. Because this speed was too damn fast, it was impossible to refine a 7th grade pill. Lin Xian took in everyone's expressions and the corners of his mouth curled up into a disdainful smile. Indeed, under normal circumstances, it was impossible to refine a 7th grade pill in half a day, let alone an extremely special pill like the purple spirit pill. However, Lin Xian was different. He had the 1,000-beast cauldron, which was a true earth-grade treasure that could greatly reduce the refining speed. Moreover, half a day was enough for Lin Xian to be waterproof. According to his actual speed, he would probably be able to refine it in 4 hours. However, he didn't dare to refine it with all his might. What if he scared those people? Now, refining in half a day had already scared those people. If he refined it in 4 hours, those people would definitely treat him as a monster and capture him to study. Lin Xian didn't want to get into trouble like that. With a wave of his hand, a light purple pill flew back and was put into the pill bottle. Then Lin Xian recalled the 1,000-beast cauldron again. After doing that, he stood up and looked ahead with a smile. Over there, Shintianyu was still refining pills and had no idea what was going on outside. However, Lin Xian's lips curled up slightly. He had refined the purple spirit pill. No matter what kind of pill his opponent refined, it would be impossible for him to beat him. Therefore he was sure to win this competition. When the crowd saw Lin Xian smile, they suddenly exclaimed in a low voice. The hearts of the Shen family disciples thumped as a bad feeling rose from the bottom of their hearts. This guy, don't tell me he really refined the purple spirit pill? How is that possible? He refined the purple spirit pill in half a day. Is he a monster? Impossible, it's definitely impossible. He must be bluffing. Yes, that must be it. The Shen family disciples shook their heads frantically. In the distance, the elders of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion looked at each other and whispered to each other. What do you think? Looking at the pill markings and fragrance, it should be a 7th grade pill without a doubt. However, I don't know if it's the purple spirit pill. Yeah, it was too fast. I didn't see it clearly. Those few elders were also grumbling. It's fine that you refined the pill so quickly, but you didn't even show us after you finished refining the pill. Are you trying to kill us? My friend Lin, have you finished refining the pill? Finally, an elder of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion stood out and rubbed his hands with a smile. Yes, I finished refining it, Lin Xian answered readily. The purple spirit pill? The elder asked again. Yes, the purple spirit pill. Lin Xian nodded. Hearing this, the crowd could not help but burst into an uproar. However, the disciples of the Shen family jumped out and shouted, Nonsense, it can't be the purple spirit pill. How can that pill be refined in such a short time? That's right. I think you must be bluffing to get away with it. Show us if you can. That's right. If you really refined it, I'll eat the sword in my hand. I'll eat it too. I don't believe that he can really refine the purple spirit pill. Chapter 1065. The elders of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion were also excited. They quickly said, Young friend Lin, why don't you take it out for us to have a look? You'll have to take it out sooner or later anyway. All right. Lin Xian said helplessly, Originally, I wanted to wait for Brother Shen to finish refining the pill. If I reveal it halfway, I'm afraid it will affect Brother Shen's refining. Alright, stop looking for excuses. Brother Chanyu won't be affected. The disciples of the Shen family sneered and did not believe him. Alright, since you want to die, I can't do anything about it. Lin Xian opened his palm and revealed the pill bottle in his hand. So many eyes here have seen that I have never changed this pill bottle. This means that the pill in this bottle is indeed something that I have just refined. I hope the elders of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion can bear witness to this. That's right, we can prove it. No one can do anything under our noses. The group of elders patted their chests and said, Young friend Lin, quickly open it and let us have a look. Lin Xian nodded and did not hesitate. He opened the pill bottle and poured out a light purple pill. Then he waved his hand and let it float in the air. At this moment, everyone opened their eyes wide and stretched their necks to look at the sky. The next moment they let out a wave of exclamations. Purple spiritual pill, it's really the purple spiritual pill. What, how is this possible? Oh my god, he refined the purple spiritual pill in half a day. This is definitely a shocking alchemy prodigy. Brother Lin, you're my idol from now on. Countless people discussed animatedly, their expressions extremely excited. The elders of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion were also shocked. They opened their eyes wide and looked at the sky. That's right, this is definitely the purple spiritual pill. This young man has a bright future ahead of him. That's right, he looks like he's only 20 years old and already has such heaven-defying strength. I'm afraid that he might break through to become an 8th grade alchemist in the future. The group of elders of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion shook their heads and their faces were filled with envy and amazement. However, the Shen family's disciples were dumbfounded. Each and every one of them were dumbstruck and panic-stricken. The faces of the disciples of the Divine Bird Palace were also gloomy. They did not expect that Lin Xian would actually be able to refine the purple spirit pill. This was definitely not good news for them. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Dream, I must be dreaming. The gloomy young man from the Chen family jumped up, his expression filled with disbelief. Fake, I don't believe it, it must be fake. The Shen family disciple still wanted to quibble. At this time Wang Li took a step forward and coldly shouted, Don't quibble. Who was the one who said he wanted to eat the sword on the spot? Come out and eat it. Yes. I heard that there are people who want to eat treasured sabers on the spot. Where are they? Let me see. The surrounding crowd also began to jeer. You are all disciples of king clans. Since he said that he would eat the sword on the spot, then let's eat it on the spot. Don't even think about running away. Otherwise your king clan's face will be completely thrown away. Hearing this, the surrounding martial artists were extremely excited, and all of them looked at the Shen family disciple with anticipation. The Shen family disciple's face darkened, and his eyes were filled with despair. Previously they were confident that Lin Xian would not be able to refine it, which was why they dared to boast like that. But now he actually managed to refine it and even wanted them to fulfill their previous promise. This made them even want to die. One had to know that that weapon was a spiritual artifact. It was incomparably hard. How could it be eaten? They probably couldn't even bite it. The group of people had sullen faces, and their expressions were extremely ugly. The group of Shen family disciples had sullen faces, and their expressions were extremely ugly. At this time Shen Yulong also stood out and coldly shouted, "Brat, don't go too far. Don't forget that we are from the King clan. It's precisely because you are from the King clan that I have to urge you to fulfill what you said before. Otherwise it wouldn't be good if you lose the face of the King clan." Lin Xian also sneered and said, "I know that you King clans value face the most, so you'd better eat it." Hearing this, Shen Yulong was so angry that he vomited blood, and the Shen family disciples were also so angry that their bodies trembled. At this moment they even had the feeling of wanting to escape. When the surrounding crowd saw this scene, they were all extremely excited, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. This was too shocking, too exciting. One had to know that the other party was a King clan disciple, a high and mighty existence that no one dared to provoke normally. But now Lin Xian directly broke this legend, and made the King clan disciples suffer. Moreover, they suffered a loss without being able to retaliate at all. Now that they saw the Shen family disciples' faces that were bleeding from holding back their blood, everyone could not help but want to laugh out loud. "Eat it, if you don't, you'll lose the face of the King clan." Lin Xian said, "Then you'll be punished when you return to your clan. So, I'm saying this for your own good. Hurry up and eat it on the spot." "Eat your grandpa." Shen Yulong had the urge to vomit blood. "For our own good? If we eat it, we'll really lose face for the King clan. So this time we can't eat it even if we're beaten to death." Lin Xian sighed when he saw the Shen family's disciple lowering his head and refusing to admit his mistake. "Sigh, the moral degeneration of the world is getting worse day by day. I didn't expect the top King clan of the mainland to not keep their promise. Seems like this world is really tragic. Yeah, what kind of King clan are they? They can't even keep their word." Wang Li also despised at the side. When the surrounding crowd heard this, they also began to mock them. As for the Divine Bird Palace disciples, their faces darkened. They didn't want to stay any longer, so one by one, they quickly escaped quietly. They had no choice, it was too embarrassing. If they stayed any longer, they would probably be mocked to death by others. "Hey, three-headed bird, why are you leaving? Don't you want to wait for the results?" Lin Xian looked at the fleeing disciples and shouted loudly. Hearing this voice, the Divine Bird Palace disciples stiffened and almost fell down. Then those people sped up and left the courtyard quickly without looking back. Seeing this scene, the surrounding crowd was stunned. Damn, this is too heaven-defying. With just a few words, he scared off a 6th grade middle sect disciple. This kind of scene has probably never happened before. At this time, Lin Xian once again looked at the Shen family disciples with a smile. "Hey, your allies have all run away. It seems like they have no confidence in you." Hearing Lin Xian's words and the crowd's disdain, the Shen family disciples couldn't help but lower their heads. They wished they could find a hole to hide in. The gloomy young man was even more unbearable. His whole body trembled and his face was extremely red. Then he finally couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. "Hey, he's spitting blood, he's spitting blood. The Shen family disciples are in the wrong." Looking at this scene, Wang Li cried out loudly. Hearing this, the gloomy young man trembled in anger and spat out another mouthful of blood. He was about to go crazy. Chapter 1066. Seeing this, the gloomy young man was stunned. The other Shen family disciples were also stunned. They did not expect this to happen. The crowd was also stunned. They all turned their heads and looked at Shen Tianyu. Shen Tianyu's face was splattered with blood, and his alchemy was interrupted. He opened his eyes angrily, and his expression was terrible. The next moment, the Nanming Ignis cauldron in front of him suddenly trembled. Then, as if it had exploded, a low sound came from the cauldron. Seeing this, the crowd exclaimed. They knew that this meant that the alchemy had failed. Shen Tianyu's face became ferocious when he heard the explosion and saw the elixir turn into ashes. He wiped the blood off his face. His cold eyes were like lightning as they quickly swept across the area. Who dares to interrupt my alchemy? He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. His voice was filled with murderous intent. Because this was a competition that everyone was watching, and because of his distinguished status, he thought that no one would dare to interrupt his alchemy. Therefore he did not take any protective measures. However, he did not expect that he would be interrupted at the most critical part of his alchemy, and he failed. He could not accept this. After all, he was in the middle of a competition. And it was a competition with a wager. In an instant he thought of Lin Xian. Only Lin Xian dared to mess with him. However, in the next moment he saw Lin Xian standing with his hands behind his back and shaking his head with a smile. Don't look at me. I'm not messing with you. It's your Shen family's son who did this. Then he pointed to the side. Family disciple? Shen Tianyu's face was ferocious. He did not believe it, but he still looked over. Then his body stiffened. It was as if lightning had flashed through his mind. He was completely stunned. That was because he saw that the gloomy young man's mouth was full of blood. He was looking ahead with a blank face. Needless to say, that mouthful of blood must be from him. Damn it. Shen Tianyu gritted his teeth. He did not expect that the person who interrupted his alchemy was from his own family. His face was ferocious. With a cold, murderous intent, he quickly walked toward the gloomy young man. Brother Tianyu. Seeing Shen Tianyu walking over, the gloomy young man trembled in fear and almost cried. I didn't do it on purpose. It's all that brat's fault. It's all his fault. The gloomy young man wanted to say something, but Shen Tianyu shouted, Useless trash, get out of my way. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his palm and slapped the gloomy young man's face, sending him flying. Suddenly, the gloomy young man's body flew into the air. He spun a few times in the air before he was sent flying. Half of his face was extremely swollen like a pig's head. All of his teeth were broken and scattered on the ground. He was in an incomparably miserable state. Scram. I don't want to see you again. Shen Tianyu's voice was cold. If it wasn't for his own disciple, he would have killed that man already. The gloomy young man's face was contorted in pain, but he didn't dare to leave. He could only lie on the ground and tremble. Ayaya killing each other, what a disgusting scene. Lin Xian sighed. The people around them tried hard to hold back their laughter and kept shaking their heads. They knew that the Shen family had completely lost today. Hearing Lin Xian's voice, Shen Tianyu suddenly turned around. His cold eyes were like sharp blades as he stared at Lin Xian. Don't be so smug. I was just forcibly interrupted. Under normal circumstances I wouldn't. Halfway through his words he suddenly stopped. Then, as if he had thought of something, his pupils suddenly shrank and he was extremely shocked. Impossible. Why are you still standing? Where's your alchemy tripod? Alchemy tripod? I put it away long ago. Do you think it's as slow as a snail like you? Finished refining? Impossible. Shen Tianyu quickly shook his head with a look of disbelief. Then he sneered, Why? Did you refine a 6th grade elixir? A 6th grade elixir? Hearing this, the people around them had strange expressions. Lin Xian also sneered. I think it's better for your own family to tell you the answer. Seeing the strange expressions of the people around him, Shen Tianyu had a bad feeling. However, he suppressed it and turned to look at the disciples of the Shen family. Tell me what's going on. However, the disciples of the Shen family looked terrible and did not dare to answer. Yulong, tell me what's going on. What kind of elixir did that kid refine? Seeing that the disciples of the Shen family did not dare to answer, Shen Tianyu could only look at Shen Yulong. Shen Yulong's face was also gloomy. However, he still said in a low voice, That kid refined the purple spirit elixir. What? Purple spirit elixir? Shen Tianyu was stunned. Those 3 words were like a bolt of lightning that struck him dumb. He never expected that Lin Xian could really refine the purple spirit elixir. Originally, in his opinion, Lin Xian's strength was not good enough and he was simply an imposter. It was impossible for him to refine a 7th grade elixir. But now he had refined it. Of course, our brother Xian spent half a day refining the purple spirit elixir. At this time, Wang Li, who was next to him, also said proudly, Half a day. Hearing this, Shen Tianyu's pupils constricted and he was shocked again. He was very suspicious, but when he saw the expressions of the disciples of the Shen family in front of him, his heart sank. In other words, everything that the other party said was true. In half a day the other party had refined the extremely precious purple spirit elixir. while he had ruined the elixir. The difference between them could be said to be obvious at a glance. Thinking of this, a fire of jealousy rose in his heart and his whole body became a little twisted. One had to know that he was a proud son of God and an alchemy genius. He was extremely talented. At such a young age, he had become a 7th-grade alchemist and was greatly cultivated by his family. In fact, his goal was to become an 8th-grade alchemist in his lifetime. It could be said that he had never taken anyone seriously, let alone those of the same generation. Yet now, a youth who was even younger than him actually defeated him in alchemy. He could not accept this. At this moment, Shen Tianyu's heart was going crazy. He looked at the strange expressions of the people around him and his heart sank. He felt like dying. He did not want to stay here for a moment longer. However, just as he turned around, Lin Xian's voice softly floated from behind. "I say, you seem to have forgotten something. Where's the bet?" "Yes, 2 6,000-year-old spiritual herbs and 3 5,000-year-old spiritual herbs." "You shouldn't have forgotten, right?" Wang Li reminded him. Hearing this, Shen Tianyu's body trembled and he almost fell down. Those spiritual herbs were his treasures. How could he bear to part with them? However, he had already said it. There was no way he could deny it. Moreover, in front of so many people, he did not dare to deny it. Because when the time comes, it would not only be him who would be embarrassed, but the entire Shen family would be embarrassed. Chapter 1067. With a heavy snort, Shen Tianyu reluctantly took out 2 6,000-year-old and 3 5,000-year-old spirit herbs from his storage ring. Then he threw them behind him. Lin Xian, on the other hand, waved his hand. Instantly, a stream of air surged and formed a gentle gust of wind that completely caught the 5 spiritual herbs. "They're really supreme spiritual herbs." Lin Xian sighed. "Thank you. Remember to look for me when you want to compete. Of course, you have to prepare the stakes in advance." Shen Tianyu's head was about to explode. He suppressed the anger in his heart and turned into a ray of light, disappearing on the spot. "Hey, why are you guys still here? Do you want to stay and eat the weapons?" Lin Xian turned around and looked at the disciples of the Shen family who were still there. Hearing this, the disciples of the Shen family trembled and quickly left like stray dogs. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people let out earth-shattering cries. It was too shocking. A young man defeated all the disciples of the King family. It was too shocking. Moreover, what made the crowd even more excited was that they had seen this unbelievable process with their own eyes. How could they not be excited? Lin Xian was also very happy. He looked at the supreme spiritual herbs in his hand and was overjoyed. These spiritual herbs were very precious and could make up for what he lacked. He had to admit that Shen Tianyu was really a god of fortune. Then Lin Xian kept the supreme spiritual herbs and left the heavenly pill pavilion with Wang Li and the rest. However, not long after he left, the news spread throughout the entire Windy City. When the people outside heard the news, they were shocked. "What did you say?" In the end, Lin Xian won the competition and Shen Tianyu blew up the pill? "Oh my god, this is unbelievable." When the crowd heard the news, they were shocked. At the same time, they admired Lin Xian even more. In an instant, Lin Xian's reputation in the Windy City reached the peak and no one could surpass him. Lin Xian bade farewell to the Windy City and returned to the Celestial Martial Arts Academy to prepare for the Secret Realm. Lin Xian had just returned to the Celestial Martial Arts Academy when a deacon sent Lin Xian information about the Secret Realm. After reading it, Lin Xian had a rough understanding of the Secret Realm. This Secret Realm was called the Remote Sky Secret Realm. It was a secret realm passed down by Liu Yang in ancient times. As it was an independent space and only opened once every 100 years, it was not affected by the outside world and there were large amounts of treasures growing inside. It could be said that it was a place where countless martial artists were envious of it. However, there were also countless risks inside. Naturally, they were the restrictions and formations that had been passed down since ancient times. But overall, it was still a very tempting secret realm. At the same time, Lin Xian also learned that the opening of the Remote Sky Mystery Land this time was very strange. It was 20 years earlier than usual. In other words, some unexpected changes might have happened inside. Moreover, the people from the major powers couldn't forcefully investigate it because the Remote Sky Secret Dimension had a special restriction on cultivation. It only allowed martial artists below the 6th heaven of the Venerable Realm to enter. Therefore, some powerful elders from powerful forces could not enter at all. Moreover, according to the information, challenger-level forces could send in 100 people while 6th-rank sects could send in 50 people. The other 5th-rank sects and clans could only send in 10 people each. Most of these people would be chosen from the younger generation and only a small number of them would be left for the older generation. Of course, the age distribution was different for each force and sect. Moreover, according to the information that Lin Xian received after returning these few days, even if there were only 100 people, not every expert on the Mystic Venerable ranking would be willing to enter. After all, it was extremely dangerous inside and they could die if they were not careful. On the contrary, those martial artists who were not on the ranking were unusually excited and wanted to try. However, even so, not everyone could enter. They had to pass the academy's strict assessment before they could enter. However, Lin Xian did not need to take part in the assessment. He only needed to prepare patiently and wait for the remote sky secret realm to open. Soon, the news of the remote sky secret realm spread and all the disciples in the Immortal Martial Academy knew about it. Instantly, the entire Immortal Martial Academy became lively. Ever since the demon-slaying conference, the Immortal Martial Academy had been peaceful for a long time. No one expected it to explode again. It could not be helped because the remote sky secret realm was even more attractive than the demon-slaying conference. There were countless heavenly treasures inside, and even some extinct spirit herbs and martial arts that had been lost. It could be said that it was a treasure trove waiting for everyone to excavate. However, the danger there was also great. It was several times more dangerous than the demon-slaying conference. Therefore, every disciple was discussing whether to enter the remote sky secret realm or not. At the same time, the academy also held a registration event. After all, this was a major event and not just anyone could enter. It had to be decided through a competition. Although the remote sky secret realm was dangerous, there were still many rooms that registered. This was an opportunity for them, an opportunity to become a dragon. In fact, it was not only the Immortal Martial Academy that was doing this. The other major forces were doing the same and were quickly selecting suitable disciples. The registration period was only 1 day. Therefore, the Immortal Martial Academy was very lively now. Those disciples who were in seclusion or outside rushed back and prepared to participate. There were also some seniors who were prepared to give it a try. Among them, Lin Xian was directly exempted from the test. At the same time, Dugu Outyin and Li Yunfei also received the same treatment. There was no choice. These three people were powerful and were the top existences in the younger generation of the academy. Therefore, they did not need to participate in the competition. Other than that, there was another person who was exempted from the competition. That was Murong Qingqing. However, she did not use the Immortal Martial Academy's quota but the Murong clan's quota. Murong Qingqing had already told Lin Xian about this before she left. Therefore, Lin Xian was not surprised. After all, the remote sky secret realm was very dangerous. It could be assumed that the Murong clan also hoped that Murong Qingqing would stay with the disciples of their clan. This would greatly increase their chances of survival. As for this competition, Lin Xian did not pay attention to it anymore. Because his strength was still at the peak of the younger generation of the academy. Only Dugu Outyin and Li Yunfei could be his opponent. The others were not qualified at all. Therefore, he did not pay too much attention to them. What he was really worried about was the disciples of the other sections. For example, the Shen clan and the Murong clan. The core disciples of these king clans were not weaker than the top 10 disciples of the academy. These were the real enemies. Chapter 1068. His cultivation had steadily increased, and he could be considered an extremely strong existence among the 4th-level venerables. Moreover, he had consumed the purple spirit pill, which had perfected the ice lotus martial soul and the great dragon sword soul. His other intents had also reached perfection, and he only needed an opportunity to transform them into a true martial soul. As for the blood sword inheritance, it was now stuck at the 4th level because it required a powerful battle to level up. He had also cultivated the other 2 earth-rank cultivation techniques to the small success stage. His current cultivation was not enough to reach the large success stage. It seems that increasing my cultivation is the way to go. Lin Xian took a deep breath. In the last few days he did not go into seclusion but completely relaxed. At the same time, he also received a piece of news that the academy had made an exchange list. It meant that cultivators could use the items in the remote sky secret realm to exchange for items in the true spirit palace. Of course, the value of the items had to be equal. Immediately, Lin Xian was interested. He remembered that he still owed the dark red divine dragon a portion of dragon blood. Let's go take a look. Lin Xian was tempted and prepared to go take a look at the so-called exchange list. There were many items on the exchange list, which meant that there were many treasures in the remote sky secret realm. Otherwise there would not be so many items on the list. Lin Xian even saw the exchange of Earth-rank martial arts, which made him extremely shocked. One had to know that Earth-rank martial arts were the top martial arts on the continent, and now the Immortal Martial Academy was actually exchanging them. One could imagine how precious the items were. He swept his gaze and quickly searched the list. Then he narrowed his eyes. Because at the top of the list, there was an exchange item, and that was dragon blood. A drop of dragon blood was worth 7 to 8 million spiritual value points in the True Spirit Palace. This price was very high. Lin Xian had been in the academy for so long, and he only had 1 million spiritual value points. If he wanted to gather 7 to 8 million spiritual value points, he would have to not exchange for anything and be busy for 2 to 3 years. This would consume too much time for him, and it was not worth it at all. But now there was an exchange list, which meant that as long as he obtained the corresponding item in the Remote Sky Secret Realm, he could exchange for a drop of dragon blood. Remote Sky Feather. Lin Xian muttered as he stared at the ceiling. This was the item that had been exchanged with the dragon blood. Dragon blood. The dark red dragon was also excited. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. But soon he revealed a suspicious expression. What's wrong? Is there something wrong with the dragon blood? Lin Xian asked. No, look at that exchange item. The dark red dragon was excited. Heavenly Abyss Feather, could it be the Heavenly Abyss Bird's feather? Heavenly Nether Bird? Lin Xian was stunned, and then his heart trembled violently. Are you sure? Something like that. Otherwise, I can't think of any bird feathers that can be exchanged for dragon blood, the dark red dragon replied. Lin Xian sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard that. Then his eyes lit up. One of his goals in coming to the Blood Realm was to find the Heavenly Nether Bird. Back then, Lin Xian had obtained an incomplete map that recorded information about the Heavenly Nether Bird. That was why Lin Xian came to the Blood Realm. However, the map wasn't complete, so Lin Xian hadn't made any progress. But now, he had obtained information about the Heavenly Nether Bird. The Remote Sky Secret Realm. Could this secret realm be related to the Heavenly Nether Bird? Lin Xian's eyelids twitched. Seems like it. The dark red dragon was also shocked. I was wondering why I couldn't find it. It's a secret realm by itself. The two of them were too excited because the Heavenly Nether Bird was a demonic beast on the heaven list. It was very useful to both of them. Needless to say, the dark red dragon needed the Heavenly Nether Bird's blood and demonic nucleus to recover its strength. As for Lin Xian, he wanted to deal with the flame to form the fire martial soul. Originally, he just wanted to go in and get some treasures, but he didn't expect to find such a thing. Lin Xian was excited. He had to get the Heavenly Nether Bird flame. He had a map in his hand and it might be useful. After making a mental note of this name, Lin Xian left the exchange board. The other disciples also stared at the list excitedly and kept discussing. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was the opening day of the Remote Sky Secret Realm. The academy also gathered all the disciples who were qualified to enter the Remote Sky Secret Realm. There were a total of 100 people, and 70 of them were young disciples and 30 of them were old martial artists. These people stood on top of an enormous ancient array platform, waiting quietly. Lin Xian was naturally among them. His eyes flickered as he looked around. Finally, he looked at the older generation figures. These older generation figures were extremely powerful, far surpassing the younger generation. Most of them were at the 6th heaven of the Honorable Realm. Lin Xian even saw 1 or 2 7th heaven of the Honorable Realm experts. Immediately, he was puzzled because according to the information he received, 7th heaven of the Honorable Realm couldn't enter. But now, there were 7th heaven of the Honorable Realm standing here. This was really strange. However, the dark red dragon said, "There's nothing to be curious about. The Celestial Martial Academy should have a special method to let 7th heaven of the Honorable Realm in. But looking at the number of people, the method to enter must be expensive." I see. Hearing the dark red dragon's explanation, Lin Xian understood. But then he became cautious because if the Celestial Martial Academy had such a method, the other king factions should have the same method. If they were interested in the Heavenly Nether Bird, the situation would be troublesome. It seemed that the Remote Sky Secret Realm was really dangerous. He had to be careful. Everyone stood on the array platform and waited quietly. Din Xian also stood at the front with her hands behind her back and looked up at the sky. A few elders near her were also whispering to each other. At the same time, on the other side of the Sky Martial continent, on a huge mountain, several figures floated in the clouds like immortals. They looked like they were in a dream. On the mountain there were strange runes flashing. They were like red soldering iron, shining with a strange light. Not only that, the other 5 mountains around it were also shining. They connected together and formed a huge light array. The 6 huge mountains pierced through the clouds. The runes on them became brighter and brighter, forming rays of light that intertwined in the void. In the end, they formed a huge array. This scene lasted for a long time before it gradually stabilized. At this moment, a pair of eyes opened in the void. His merciless gaze tore through the sky. Accompanying it was a terrifying aura. Then a majestic voice sounded. The remote sky secret realm was finally opened. The voice was low and carried a terrifying aura. Even the void couldn't withstand it. The hearts of the disciples in the distance trembled and their bodies trembled. Xinqiang, let's start with you. The majestic voice sounded again. If someone was here, they would definitely exclaim because these people were from the Shen family. Hearing the majestic voice, a middle-aged man stepped on the void and walked over slowly. Chapter 1069. The hearts of the hundreds of disciples trembled when they saw the majestic figure. There was fear and respect in their eyes. Uncle Xinqiang, go for it. Many disciples clenched their fists. Xinqiang calmed himself down and looked up at the heaven's eye in the sky. Then he said respectfully, Forefather, I'm going in. The deep voice sounded in the sky with the might of a king. Then Xinqiang stepped out with a cold expression. When he stepped onto the dark red light platform, the entire void started to shake. The huge light formation in the sky also shook and countless cracks appeared on it. Xinqiang's cultivation has improved again. An ordinary 7th heaven supremacy can't cause such a commotion. Yeah, the teleportation formation can't take it any longer. However, if he can enter, he'll definitely get a great opportunity. Don't worry, the other forces won't dare to try, but our Shen family can definitely send him in safely. Up in the sky, a few elders were having a quick discussion while the hundreds of disciples in the distance were also nervously watching this scene. Obviously, the middle-aged man called Xinqiang was a 7th heaven supremacy. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for him to enter the remote sky mystery realm. However, as a sovereign family, the Shen family naturally had a special method. In the sky, the huge light formation shone brightly and quickly connected with heaven and earth. A huge tunnel appeared in the sky. However, the tunnel was extremely unstable and seemed to show signs of breaking at any time. It was the tunnel that led to the remote sky mystery realm. However, it only allowed martial artists below the 6th heaven supremacy to enter. Above this level, the tunnel would become extremely unstable. If a powerful martial artist tried to force his way in, he might be torn to pieces by the unstable spatial power. Now, the middle-aged man called Xinqiang was about to experience that. Under the effect of the huge light formation, his body floated towards the dark tunnel. Then the tunnel began to tremble slightly, forming countless shocking cracks. It was as if the Buddha wanted to devour the middle-aged man. It was a terrifying scene. If one was enveloped by the terrifying spatial power, one would not be able to escape at all. Therefore, the middle-aged man was extremely dangerous at the moment. When the hundreds of disciples saw that, they exclaimed and were extremely nervous. However, Xinqiang snorted coldly in the air. He waved his hand and a stream of light appeared above his head. Tens of thousands of rays of light descended and enveloped his body. Earthstep artifact fragment. Seeing this scene, a disciple exclaimed. Receiving a treasure fragment from the ground. When the surrounding disciples heard this, they revealed looks of envy. Even though it was just a fragment, it was something even more terrifying and precious than a half-Earthstep artifact. No wonder the other party dared to enter the remote sky secret realm despite being a 7th layer venerable. It turned out that he had a terrifying weapon like the fragment of an Earth-rank treasure artifact. Many disciples quickly discussed among themselves, and their hearts were finally at ease. Sure enough, in the void above, under the effect of the Earth-class treasure fragment, Xinqiang's figure rapidly shuttled through the passageway and disappeared. After Xinqiang, a few older martial artists walked out and used special methods to enter the remote heaven secret realm. After the older generation left, it was time for the younger generation. However, compared to the older generation, the younger generation was much safer. This was because none of them had surpassed the 6th heaven of venerable realm, so they did not have to worry about being killed by the power of space. When the Shen family entered the remote heaven secret realm, the Murong family was also making preparations. At this moment, a pitch-black passageway appeared above the Murong family. It was as if a huge beast in the abyss had opened its mouth. It was extremely terrifying. Qingqing, have you really thought it through? Although there are many treasures inside, it's also extremely dangerous. There was a period of time when the death rate in the remote heaven secret realm was 50%. A delicate-looking young man said. This young man was extremely handsome, like a fairy child, and he had an otherworldly aura. He looked like a young man, but he spoke very maturely. However, no one dared to look down on him. Even the surrounding elders looked at him with respect. This was because although this young man looked young, his eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life. When he moved his eyes, he emitted a few wisps of the aura of a king. This completely opposite scene appeared on this young man at the same time, making him seem extremely mysterious. Great-grandfather, don't worry. I've thought it through. Moreover, with the treasures you've given me, I won't be in too much danger. Murong Qingqing smiled. Alright, since you've decided, let's begin. Hearing this, everyone's expression turned serious. Then they looked to the front. Under the pitch-black passageway there was a beautiful figure. She was like a fairy without a trace of the mortal world. Behind her there were close to 100 young disciples. At this moment they were all waiting excitedly. Murong Qingqing smiled faintly. Like a fairy she flew into the passageway above. After Murong Qingqing landed, the passageway that was originally trembling became extremely stable. There were no abnormalities at all. Looking at the gradually disappearing figure, the crowd was amazed. Especially the elders, all of them nodded their heads in satisfaction. It seemed that the bloodline in this girl's body had been awakened. Otherwise, with her cultivation, it would be impossible for her to stabilize the space passageway. That's right. Her bloodline has finally been awakened. Perhaps there will be another king in the Murong family soon. The few elders were excited. However, the handsome young man shook his head slightly. Qingqing had a long way to go. She shouldn't be limited to the family. Compared to here, the outside world was much more exciting. It would also allow her to grow more. The handsome young man's words shook the hearts of the elders. However, no one dared to say anything. Palace of Ares, holy land of martial arts. The huge palace stood tall in the clouds. On the majestic door, there was a divine sword and a demonic saber carved on it. The two intersected, forming the totem of the Palace of Ares. In the Palace of Ares, a skinny old man sat in a majestic hall. The aura of this old man was extremely terrifying. It was as if he could destroy the world with a raise of his hand. This person was the vice palace master of the Palace of Ares. However, it was obvious that his faction was still in control of the Palace of Ares. Below the throne there was a middle-aged man. He was wearing a blood-red robe. His eyes were filled with arrogance like an overlord. It wasn't easy. Finally, at the last moment before the opening of the remote sky secret realm, we managed to seize control of it. The middle-aged man said with a smile. His voice was filled with joy and excitement. It's nothing. Although that guy is strong, it's not his real body. As long as we spend some time, we will be able to make him disappear one day. When that time comes, the entire Palace of Ares will be mine. The skinny old man said in a deep voice. There was a hint of sharpness in his voice. Chapter 1070. That person? You mean the young man they're waiting for? Yes. The middle-aged man said, this information should be correct. However, I didn't expect that young man to be related to the Immortal Martial Academy and even be valued. After hearing that, the old man pondered for a moment before saying, it's nothing. If it's really that person, he'll definitely enter the remote sky secret realm this time. At that time, we'll send someone to kill him in the secret realm. If that's the case, they'll be completely defeated. Hearing this, a cold smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face. Lin Xian, right? Since you dare to appear, don't blame us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not existing in this world. At the Immortal Martial Academy's side, a pitch-black tunnel also appeared. As soon as the tunnel appeared, the originally quiet scene instantly became chaotic. Then, under the command of Dean Xian and the other elders, the older generation started to enter the tunnel first. Fortunately, the Immortal Martial Academy was powerful and had a deep foundation. Therefore, the two 7th-level honorables also entered the tunnel safely. Next, it was the younger generation. Dugu Outyin carried a long sword on his back and had a tall figure. He turned his head to look at Lin Xian and said in a deep voice, Brother Lin, I'll make a move first. After saying that, he stomped his foot and like a sword light, he instantly disappeared into the black tunnel above. Then Li Yunfei also glanced at Lin Xian before turning around and soaring into the sky. Seeing those two figures, Lin Xian also took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with seriousness. He knew that it was his turn now. When Li Yunfei's figure also disappeared into the tunnel, Lin Xian moved. He didn't fly at an extreme speed. Instead, he flew slowly towards the black tunnel. However, just as he stepped into the black tunnel, the originally stable black tunnel suddenly trembled slightly. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned because they didn't expect this to happen at all. One had to know that only when the first two 7th-level honorables entered the tunnel would there be such a phenomenon. And now the same phenomenon was happening to Lin Xian as well. This was simply too unbelievable. In an instant, Lin Xian's expression turned extremely ugly. He couldn't understand why the black tunnel would suddenly undergo such a change. One had to know that even though he was powerful, he didn't think that he could compare to a 7th-level venerated cultivator. Therefore he couldn't figure it out at all. However, the current situation did not allow him to think too much about it. This was because from the way the passage was trembling, it seemed like it would soon shatter. Seeing this scene, the young disciples below were terrified. Even Headmaster Xian and the others had grave expressions on their faces. One had to know that Lin Xian's identity was special. He could not afford to lose him, let alone encounter danger in this passage. Thus, without any hesitation, school head Xian made her move. He formed a series of mystical hand seals that flew upwards in an attempt to take control of the black tunnel. However, it didn't seem to have much effect. On the other hand, the dark red divine dragon sent a voice transmission. D*eminent, I forgot. Although my cultivation base has dropped, my realm has indeed surpassed that of a king. It had to be known that once one became a king, their body's life level and soul would undergo heaven-defying changes. They would be completely different from supreme experts. Therefore, even though the dark red divine dragon's cultivation base was gone, his body and soul mark were truly at the king realm. However, such power was not allowed to pass through the black tunnel. Hearing the dark red divine dragon's words, Lin Xian's expression became even more unsightly. What could he do? He had two choices now. One was to leave the dark red divine dragon behind and enter the black tunnel alone. However, even though he would be safe in that way, the restrictions in the remote heavenly secret realm would become his biggest problem. After all, he had also learned formation restrictions from the dark red divine dragon and was far superior to ordinary formation masters. However, the ancient restrictions were not child's play. With his current strength, it would probably be very difficult for him to go against them. Therefore, unless he had no other choice, he didn't want to leave the dark red divine dragon behind at all. However, if he didn't leave the dark red divine dragon behind, he would be killed by the spatial power. He wouldn't be able to resist such power either. Therefore, facing him now seemed to be a dead end. Zero, do you have a way? Lin Xian had no choice but to send a voice transmission to Zero. Zero didn't say anything. Instead, he directly activated the Thousand Beast Cauldron and shot out a black halo that enveloped Lin Xian's body. With the support of the Earth Tier treasure, Lin Xian was completely safe. Then he quickly passed through the black tunnel and finally disappeared. Seeing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. That scared me to death. What happened just now? Why did something happen to the black tunnel? It shouldn't be. Although Lin Xian's strength is outstanding, it's far from being a threat to the black tunnel. I think there must be a mistake. No matter what, the strange phenomenon has disappeared. Lin Xian can be considered to have entered safely. The elders were completely relieved. However, they didn't notice the black light shot out by the Thousand Beast Cauldron. They all thought that the black tunnel had calmed down by itself. It couldn't be helped. The black light was similar in color to the black tunnel. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to tell at all. Moreover, when Zero was controlling it, he had used a relatively low-key method. Therefore, it was normal that the elders didn't notice it at first. However, Dean Xian frowned slightly. He had caught a glimpse of the faint light just now. However, he was just curious and didn't think much of it. Lin Xian didn't know about this because he was still in a strange space under the effect of the spatial teleportation. With a flash of white light, Lin Xian's figure appeared in the void. However, he immediately frowned. When the spatial power disappeared, an extremely heavy force supported his body. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on him. This is? Lin Xian's expression changed drastically. He quickly activated the art of longevity. The spiritual energy in his body surged and formed a force to resist the gravity. Then he landed safely and heaved a sigh of relief. The dark red dragon also came out of the storage ring. It kept waving its dragon claws in fear. Damn, that scared me to death. That was so dangerous. Indeed, the situation just now was very dangerous. Fortunately, Lin Xian had many trump cards and finally passed through safely. The dark red dragon heaved a sigh of relief. Then it sensed its surroundings and was surprised. The gravity here is different. It seems to be much heavier than outside. Indeed, Lin Xian's expression was solemn. He felt a force several times heavier than outside pressing down on him. However, his body had been nourished by many natural treasures and was extremely strong. This gravity was nothing to him. However, this strange scene made him extremely bewildered. That was because he had entered many arcane realms. For example, the monster-slaying world was a strange arcane realm. However, the monster-slaying world was nothing compared to this place. That was because this remote sky arcane realm was far superior to the monster-slaying world in all aspects. Chapter 1071. The air in the remote sky secret realm was heavier than Lin Xian had imagined. It also had an ancient aura. The remote sky secret realm was a secret realm that had been passed down since ancient times. It was extremely mysterious. Even after so many years, the various forces of the Sky Martial continent had sent their elite disciples in. However, they had only explored 10 or 20% of the secret realm. It was impossible to explore the whole picture. In other words, more than 80% of the secret realm had not been explored. After analyzing this, Lin Xian's expression did not look good. However, he did not give up. He could give up on other treasures, but he had to find the heavenly netherbird. Don't worry, little Xian. According to my judgment, the heavenly netherbird is definitely in this secret realm. The dark red dragon said, however, our first task is not to find the heavenly netherbird, but to find treasures to increase our strength quickly. After all, no one knew what state the heavenly netherbird was in. Hearing this, Lin Xian nodded. The dark red dragon was right. This place was extremely dangerous. It was best to increase one's strength first. Just as the two of them were conversing, there was another fluctuation in the void. Figures appeared in the void and quickly descended. Obviously, those who appeared later were also disciples of the Immortal Martial Academy. However, they had just entered and were naturally suppressed by the gravity here. Each of them was like a meteor as they fell violently. However, these disciples of the Immortal Martial Academy were not ordinary people. Therefore, after a moment of panic, they calmed down and used their methods to safely land. However, these people did not land in the same place as Lin Xian. They landed in a different area. They were a few thousand meters away from Lin Xian, and there were two mountains in between. In fact, Lin Xian understood after thinking about it. The black passageway allowed at most a sixth heaven venerable to pass through. Venerables above the sixth heaven could enter the passageway by ingenious means, but they could not stay with the crowd. Instead, they were randomly sent to remote sky mystery land. In other words, the two seventh heaven venerables from the Immortal Martial Academy were not here at all. As for Lin Xian, because he was carrying the dark red dragon, there were some abnormalities and he deviated from the path. Fortunately, Zero acted in time, so the trajectory did not deviate by much. In the beginning, Lin Xian was not familiar with the hidden sky secret realm, so he did not plan to act alone. Instead, he planned to stay with the team for a period of time and make a decision after he had a thorough understanding of the place. With a flicker, Lin Xian flew towards the place where everyone was about to land. However, even though it was said to be flying, it was actually jumping because the air here was extremely dense, even suppressing martial artists from flying. This didn't mean that Lin Xian couldn't fly, but it would consume a lot of spiritual energy. In this unfamiliar place, preserving his strength was the most important thing. Therefore, Lin Xian only used his movement technique and quickly ran on the ground. At the front, the older generation figures and young disciples had completely settled down after landing. Then they began to size up the surroundings and count the number of people. Very soon, they frowned because they realized that Lin Xian wasn't with them apart from the two 7th level venerables. This greatly surprised them. However, they soon heaved a sigh of relief because they saw Lin Xian flying towards them quickly. "You're finally here. We thought you were randomly teleported out too," Bing Ling said worriedly in the crowd. No, there was a slight deviation during the teleportation process. Fortunately, it wasn't too far away. Lin Xian shrugged and returned to the team. The older generation figures also heaved a sigh of relief. Then they looked around and said in a low voice, "As this is your first time entering the Hidden Sky secret realm and you're not familiar with this place, it's best that we don't split up at the beginning." After hearing that, everyone nodded in agreement. Indeed, this place was unpredictable and dangerous. If everyone was together, their safety would be greatly increased. Moreover, they were completely clueless about this place. If they went out alone, they might not be able to find anything. The following matters were easy to handle. With the older generation figures taking the lead, Lin Xian and the rest began to walk in the hidden sky secret realm. Now let's confirm our location. One of the elders, Elder Song, said. Then he took out a map and began to study it with everyone. Elder Song was very powerful and had reached the 6th heaven of the martial honor realm. Moreover, he was very old and had been here twice before. Therefore, no one was more familiar with the hidden sky secret realm than him. In front of him, even Dugu Outyin, Li Yunfei, and the rest did not dare to act rashly. Elder Song and a few of the older generation figures studied it for a while and then said loudly, "If I'm not wrong, we should be in the Mirage Sea zone." Mirage Sea? Wen Yan said. Everyone frowned. Even Lin Xian's face did not look too good. Because the Mirage Sea was very mysterious and rumored to be very terrifying, no one wanted to stay here. After taking a deep breath, Elder Song said in a low voice, "I think we should hurry up and leave this place." Everyone nodded and went on their way. The dark red divine dragon looked suspicious. Mirage Sea? What kind of lousy name is that? There's not even a drop of water here. How can it be called the Mirage Sea? It looked around for a long time but did not find anything. Therefore it could only follow beside Lin Xian. Next, Lin Xian and the rest began to move forward under Elder Song's lead. However, no one flew because flying here consumed too much spiritual power. The gains did not make up for the losses. This was a test of everyone's movement skills. Those with good movement skills were like fish in water here. They could even ingeniously reduce the pressure in the air. Lin Xian's movement skills were probably the best among them. There was no other way. His Void Tomb Illusory Demonic Steps was an Earth-rank movement skill. However, he did not walk too fast. Instead, he walked with the rest. However, a few disciples who were confident in their movement skills chose to lead the way. Boom. However, as Lin Xian and the rest were walking, there was a sudden earth-shattering sound in front of them. Then, countless rays of light lit up like colorful clouds, shocking the surroundings. Along with it, there was a vast amount of spiritual power and the sound of intense fighting. Oh no, they're fighting. When everyone heard the sound, their faces changed. They all sped up to provide support. Lin Xian tapped his foot and flew out like a puff of smoke. Soon he saw the scene in front of him. There, over 10 disciples were fighting with a pack of demonic wolves. This pack of demonic wolves was extremely terrifying. They had already reached the level of demon general. Moreover, the demonic chi on their bodies condensed into armor, making them even more difficult to deal with. For a moment, these demonic wolves were actually locked in battle with the disciples in front of them. This was too shocking. One must know that these disciples of the Immortal Martial Academy were all geniuses. In the outside world, ordinary demon generals were not their opponents. They could almost be killed in a single move. Even demon generals of the same level would not be in such a sorry state. Chapter 1072. It seemed that the gravity in the remote sky secret realm was not the only abnormal place. Even the demonic beasts were much stronger than those in the outside world. Fortunately, Lin Xian had more people on his side, and there were also older generation experts. One of the elders rushed over and snorted as he punched forward. The terrifying fist brought about a strong gust of wind and blew up a demonic wolf. Seeing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, they were shocked by the combat power of the older generation. As expected of the older generation, their combat power was too fierce. The rest of the older generation also attacked and killed more than 10 demonic wolves in an instant. When the remaining wolves saw this scene, they were finally frightened. They quickly howled and tried to escape in all directions. Hey, these demonic wolves are ancient remnant beasts. The fur and bones on them are very strange. If this material is used to refine weapons, it should be much better than those in the outside world. A few of the older generation looked at the demonic wolves' corpses on the ground with shining eyes. After hearing this, the disciples at the back were also shocked. As expected of the remote sky secret realm, there were indeed many treasures. Just a pack of demonic wolves was an ancient remnant beast. This place was full of treasures. Of course, in order to obtain rich treasures, one had to be powerful. Without the older generation, the younger generation would have to put in a lot of effort. Next, Elder Song divided them into groups. The younger generation was divided into 3 groups, led by Lin Xian, Dugu Outyin, and Li Yunfei. The older generation experts stood guard at the side. Not long after, Lin Xian and the rest were intercepted again. It was still demonic wolves, but there were obviously more of them this time. There was even a wolf king in the group. This time, the battle was much more intense than before, and all kinds of spiritual energy radiance splashed everywhere. Lin Xian's side was also attacked, and the battle was about to start. He waved his hand and a series of palm shadows rushed out with a terrifying icy aura. All the demonic wolves that were touched by the icy aura were quickly covered in frost. They were frozen and slowed down. Seeing this, the others attacked with all their might. Lin Xian did not fight the demon wolves with all his might. Instead, he acted as the commander, occasionally releasing his icy aura to control the entire battlefield. All of a sudden, Lin Xian's heart started pounding as a bad premonition rose from the bottom of his heart. He quickly released his soul force to scan the surroundings while shouting, "Be careful. Pay attention to the plants around you." His voice was like a clap of thunder, exploding in everyone's ears. Momentarily, the hearts of the Immortal Martial Academy's disciples shuddered as they rapidly formed a defensive barrier around their bodies. Sure enough, in the next moment, the grayish-brown plant nearby came to life. Like a demon, it kept swaying. Moreover, countless gray tree branches shot out from the ground like venomous pythons and quickly wrapped around the crowd. This change was very sudden. Some of the tree branches had black poisonous thorns on them. It was obvious that they were covered in poison. If it wasn't for Lin Xian's warning, these disciples would have long been pierced by the poisonous thorns. If that was the case, they would be in danger. However, even with Lin Xian's warning, there were still some disciples who were too slow. They did not dodge in time and were struck by the grayish-brown vines. They were instantly sent flying. There was even a disciple whose defensive barrier was cracked. Instantly, the disciple's pupils shrank as a terrified expression appeared on his face. Fortunately, the poisonous thorns did not injure his body. However, the grayish-brown plants did not let these people go, especially the few disciples who were sent flying. Countless vines quickly wrapped around them. Seeing this, Lin Xian coldly snorted. He flicked out a thunderstorm sword ripple with his finger, which was as fast as lightning, slashing forward. The sound of an intense collision rang out. Terrifying energy spread out in all directions, instantly tearing the ground apart. Countless energy collided, forming a violent wind that swept up sand and dust, like a tornado that swept in all directions. Lin Xian's sword was very sharp. It directly cut off the grayish-brown branches. Thank you, Brother Lin." The few disciples were also frightened. They quickly retreated and joined the others. However, although everyone gathered together, they did not look good. This was because scarlet blood flowed out from the broken branches, instantly dyeing the ground red. Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and felt their scalps go numb. A tree branch could actually bleed. This was the first time they had seen such a scene. Before anyone could react, a shrill cry suddenly came from the depths of the ground. Immediately after, the entire ground trembled as if a huge monster had awakened. It quickly drilled out from the ground. The ground bulged and then countless cracks appeared as it quickly rushed into the distance. A huge tree demon crawled up from the ground and roared ferociously. Its voice was terrifying. This tree demon was very large, almost 100 meters tall. There was a flat cut on its upper left side, which was caused by Lin Xian's sword chi. Lin Xian's sword chi had angered the tree demon below. It roared and its branches trembled. Like poisonous snakes, they quickly lashed out at the crowd. "Be careful, these branches are highly poisonous," Lin Xian quickly reminded them. At the same time, he calmly dodged the attacks of the countless branches. Everyone knew how powerful it was and did not dare to fight it head-on. They all fled. At this moment, a cold shout was heard. Among the crowd, Chi Hao roared and waved his huge palm, slamming it to the left. This palm was extremely terrifying. It shook the surroundings and the entire void was mercilessly torn apart. The blue palm was like a vast ocean, fiercely blasting towards the gray tree demon. However, the tree demon also roared. The countless branches on its body waved and quickly intertwined, forming a gray fist that blasted forward. An earth-shattering sound was heard. The tree demon's fist actually blocked the ocean blue palm shadow. Furthermore, the power formed by the countless branches even pushed Chi Hao back through the blue light pillar. Seeing this, everyone's hearts trembled. They could not believe it. Who was Chi Hao? He was an expert in the top 10 of the Mystic Sovereign leaderboard. However, he was unable to take down the tree demon. This was simply too shocking. No wonder it was said that the remote sky mystery realm was extremely terrifying. Now it seemed that it was true. However, it was fortunate that Chi Hao was only pushed back and was not injured. On the other side, Lin Xian roared coldly and quickly waved his arm. Previously, he had only been in control of the situation and would only act when there was danger. However, he could not care less now. The Grey Tree Demon's strength was beyond his expectations. He had to act quickly and defeat it. Countless pieces of ice gathered and formed an icy blue fist that blasted forward. The tree demon roared angrily. The branches on its body trembled and formed a huge gray shield in front of it. Chapter 1073. When the frost fist approached the gray shield, it suddenly disintegrated and turned into 5 ice dragons that attacked the gray tree demon from 5 different directions. This change was very sudden. The gray shield tightly blocked 2 ice dragons, but the other 3 ice dragons fiercely slammed into its body, causing it to be knocked back. The giant tree demon only stopped after taking 7 or 8 steps back. However, the ground had been trampled beyond recognition. Lin Xian furrowed his brows when he saw this. The punch just now was not simple. Even an ordinary 4th-level supremacy would have been injured. However, the gray tree demon was only forced back a few steps and did not suffer any substantial damage. This was beyond his expectations. Then he snorted coldly and his eyes shone with a shocking light. That punch just now was just an ordinary punch. His true strength was not just that. He dared to guarantee that the gray tree demon would not have it so easy. He bent his fingertips and the aura of wind and thunder gathered, forming a sword wave of spiritual power that swallowed the light. Then Lin Xian flicked his finger and the wind and thunder sword wave also surged out quickly. Strong wind and lightning rushed toward the gray tree demon quickly. Not only that, but the sword wave also contained the power of the great dragon sword soul. It could be said that the attack was extremely powerful. In addition to the wind and thunder attributes, the sword wave was extremely sharp. Boom, boom. The huge sword wave hit the gray tree body. Immediately, countless lightning bolts jumped and wild winds danced, completely enveloping the other party. However, the black tree demon roared angrily and waved all the branches on its body to resist. However, Lin Xian did not give it a chance to turn around. With a flick of his finger, terrifying sword chi surged out one after another. They intertwined in the air and quickly slashed forward. Amidst the sword chi, the giant tree demon was beaten into a sorry state and screamed in pain. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. They all looked forward with their mouths wide open in disbelief. They knew the strength of the tree demon, especially the poisonous thorns on the branches. Could be said that it was extremely terrifying. Even a 4th-level supremacy would not dare to fight it head-on. Moreover, not long ago, Qi Hao, who was ranked in the top 10 of the Mystic Sovereign leaderboard, had collided with the tree demon's palm and had been forced back. This further proved how powerful the tree demon was. However, such a terrifying tree demon was being beaten back repeatedly by Lin Xian, and it was in such a sorry state. This was far beyond everyone's expectations. Is this really Lin Xian? His strength is so terrifying. That's right. This sword chi is too sharp, far surpassing those of the same level. Why do I feel like he's comparable to those of the older generation? Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as their scalps went numb. Among those present, only the older generation possessed such combat strength. However, Lin Xian's display of such powerful combat strength had truly shocked everyone present. However, at the moment when the crowd were discussing among themselves, those people of the older generation also arrived and began to attack. Seeing this, Lin Xian did not continue to attack. Instead, he withdrew the sword waves. In any case, with the help of these seniors, the gray tree demon would not be able to escape. So, he might as well save his strength for a rainy day. As expected, under the joint attack of a few of the older generation experts, the gray tree demon shrieked in pain and was quickly torn apart. Seeing this, the crowd was still amazed. As expected of the older generation, they were simply too powerful, far surpassing the younger generation. Lin Xian was also shocked. Indeed, the combat strength of the older generation was very strong. They were not on the same level as the younger disciples. It seemed that his greatest enemy in the obscure secret mirror this time was the older generation of the other forces. Thinking of this, Lin Xian's heart turned heavy. He did not dare to be careless. After killing the tree demon, the older generation began to organize the tree demon's corpse as materials for refining weapons. The other younger disciples quickly sat down cross-legged to recover their strength. Not long after, the older generation finished their work. The younger generation also opened their eyes, stood up, and set off again. Along the way, the crowd did not speak. They all walked forward in silence because they did not want to stay in the illusory sea zone any longer. Some of the wealthier younger disciples even took out demonic beasts from their demonic beast pouches as mounts. In this way the cultivator would be able to save a great deal of strength, and they would be able to display their greatest combat strength in battle. Lin Xian rubbed his chin when he saw this scene. He had 2 demonic beasts in his possession as well. However, he thought about it and didn't take them out in the end. One of his demonic beasts was the gold-wing eagle, and the other was the gold-eye toad. However, flying was restricted in this place, so the gold-wing eagle wasn't of much use. Moreover, even though this place was called the Illusory Sea, the surroundings were dry like a desert. So, the gold-eye toad was probably unable to display much of its strength here. So, it was better to travel on foot. At dusk, the afterglow of the setting sun. Everyone's shadows were long on the ground. At this moment, the scorching temperature in the surroundings had gradually vanished, and it was replaced by a trace of gloomy coldness. Everyone was shocked when they sensed the changes in the surroundings and they frowned. Elder Song had a solemn expression as well, and he said in a low voice, "The Illusory Sea Zone is extremely famous. According to rumor, it's extremely hot during the day and extremely cold at night. It's even capable of freezing Exalt Realm cultivators to death. So, let's speed up and find a safe place to spend the night." Freeze Exalt Realm cultivators to death. Everyone's eyelids twitched when they heard that and they gasped. How strong were Exalt Realm cultivators? They were powerhouses, yet such figures could actually be frozen to death? One could imagine how terrifying the temperature was. Sure enough, as if to prove Elder Song's words, a cold wind blew in the surroundings not long after. A bone-piercing chill quickly spread, and the sand beneath their feet turned from boiling hot to icy cold. Everyone couldn't help but quicken their pace when they sensed the chill. At this moment, a cry of surprise was suddenly heard. "Damn, what's that?" A disciple pointed at the sky in the distance and shouted. There was even a trace of fear in his voice. Everyone raised their heads and looked over when they heard that. Then they were all dumbstruck and stunned on the spot. Lin Xian was similarly shocked, and his heart thumped wildly. However, he had seen too many strange things, so even though he was shocked, he wasn't stunned. However, his expression was extremely unsightly because a huge shadow had appeared on the horizon in the distance. It was like a dark cloud. However, relying on his outstanding soul power, Lin Xian knew that it wasn't a dark cloud at all. Because the huge shadow was covered in scales, and it was very obvious that it was a demonic beast. However, this made him even more shocked. Because only a portion of its body was revealed, yet it covered half the sky. Exactly how big was the demonic beast's hand? The mysterious demonic beast's huge body circled in the sky like a dark cloud, and it pressed down on everyone to the point that they couldn't breathe. Then 2 rays of light that were like the sun appeared. Everyone knew that those were the eyes of the huge demonic beast. "Everyone be careful. Don't move," Elder Song warned coldly. Chapter 1074. Everyone be careful. Don't move, Elder Song reminded them coldly. Even though he was a powerhouse in the 6th heaven, he was still terrified by the enormous demonic beast because its aura was too terrifying. It was like a demonic mountain that one could only look up at. Then everyone saw that behind the huge eye, a head gradually appeared. The head was indescribable because it was too huge. Moreover, under everyone's shocked gazes, the head opened its mouth. Subsequently, a deep voice was heard. It seemed to have come from the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and it was deafening. All of a sudden, Lin Xian was shocked, and a bad premonition arose in his heart. Sure enough, in the next moment, something that shocked everyone happened. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the huge head opened its bloody mouth. Subsequently, it spat out a pillar of water. It was as if the water of the Milky Way had descended from the sky. Although it was called a pillar of water, it was actually no different from the sea. In an instant, it filled the entire sky and quickly swept towards Lin Xian and the others. The aura was too terrifying because it was not ordinary seawater. It contained a primitive aura. "Quickly defend," Elder Song shouted. Subsequently, his spiritual power erupted and formed a huge ball of light that enveloped his body. Everyone was stunned. Soon after, they came to their senses and quickly defended their bodies with all their might. It could not be helped because they could not escape at all because they were surrounded by seawater. Hence, they could only defend passively. Lin Xian also took a deep breath. A layer of bright red armor covered his body. On it, there was a bright red lotus that swayed rapidly. Accompanying it was a mysterious aura. Faced with an unknown danger, Lin Xian immediately activated the red lotus armor to protect his entire body. At the side, the dark red dragon also had a grave expression. However, it did not take any defensive measures because it was a king to begin with. Even though its cultivation level had dropped, its body was different from a venerable one's and could be said to be extremely tough. The seawater was terrifying, but it could not hurt it at all. Even so, he still looked around with a solemn expression. At the next moment, everyone was enveloped by endless seawater. Not only that, but the entire area was also covered by seawater. In an instant, it turned into a boundless sea. Lin Xian and the others continued to sink, but fortunately they were not injured. The dark red divine dragon kept spitting out seawater. Damn, I finally know why this place is called the Mirage Sea. Lin Xian was also speechless and rolled his eyes. How could he have known that such a change would occur in this place? As expected of a mystic realm passed down from ancient times, it was indeed mysterious and unpredictable. Soon he landed at the bottom of the sea with the others. At this moment, the bottom of the sea had already changed. Due to the appearance of the seawater, the original desert had already disappeared and was replaced by a real sea. At this moment they also seemed to be at the bottom of the sea. However, this wasn't all because undercurrents were also surging beneath the sea, and the waves were surging violently. Therefore, everyone could only circulate their spirit energy with all their might and firmly hold onto the ground like a boulder. Otherwise, they would be swept away by the endless seawater. Who knew where they would be swept to? Therefore, an extremely strange scene appeared. Lin Xian and the others were like statues, bitterly persevering at the bottom of the sea. Elder Song's expression was also solemn. As expected of the Mirage Sea, it was indeed as dangerous as the legend said. Everyone was also speechless. The sky was fine, so where did such a huge demonic beast come from and spit out so much seawater? However, this made them even more alarmed because in this remote sky mystic realm, there might be a huge threat at any time. The undercurrents underground became more and more rapid, and finally, like darkness, they drowned everyone. After an unknown period of time, the undercurrents gradually disappeared, and the surrounding light returned to normal. Lin Xian also heaved a sigh of relief. He looked around and then opened his mouth wide. This was because the current underwater world was completely different from when they had just come up. When they had just come down, there were undercurrents and it was a land of death. However, it was different now and the surrounding seawater was calm. There were countless creatures around, and what was even more shocking was that there were black shadows in front of them that were like huge mountains. However, Lin Xian's soul power was outstanding, and he could clearly sense that it wasn't an underwater volcano, but a building. Underwater buildings, and it was a stretch. This was simply too amazing. At this moment, not only Lin Xian but the older generation figures also noticed the abnormality. They all frowned and looked ahead cautiously. Not long after, the younger disciples also noticed it and soon someone exclaimed, "Oh my God, the underwater world! Could this be the Dragon Palace?" The Dragon Palace. Hearing this, everyone's hearts trembled. At this moment, another person exclaimed, "The Dragon Palace? That's a land of treasures. Could this really be a land of treasures?" Hearing this, everyone was excited. Their main purpose in coming to this remote sky mystic realm was to look for treasures. Now, there was an unknown land of treasures in front of them. How could they not be excited? Lin Xian was also very surprised because he did feel a shocking energy fluctuation from the buildings in front of him. However, he didn't know whether it was a treasure or not. "Elder Song, what should we do?" The group of disciples looked at the older generation figures with anticipation. Elder Song and the other older generation figures quickly discussed, then nodded and decided to investigate. Suddenly, everyone cheered. They quickly scouted around and then carefully moved forward. Gradually, everyone got closer to the underground buildings, then they exclaimed one by one. One had to admit that the buildings were too majestic. It was like a palace at the bottom of the sea, shining with colorful lights. On the walls, there were carvings of dragons as if they were real dragons. Could this really be the Dragon Palace? Seeing this, many people swallowed their saliva. Most of the doors here were closed. Could there be some kind of restriction? Li Yunfei frowned and said because he tried a few times and found that the doors couldn't be opened at all. The other disciples didn't believe it and tried a few times, but it was to no avail. Lin Xian frowned slightly, then quickly probed with his soul power. With his soul power that was close to that of a grade 7 alchemist, he quickly probed and found something. "I found a place where there are no restrictions. Follow me," Lin Xian said. Suddenly, everyone was excited and even the older generation figures quickly looked over. Then, under the lead of Lin Xian, everyone came to a crystal door. To their joy, the door was not closed. Chapter 1075. In the end, everyone discussed and decided to have a few older generation figures lead the way while the younger disciples followed behind. This was mainly done because the older generation figures were knowledgeable and powerful, so they could avoid danger to the greatest extent. Soon the crowd passed through the open crystal door and walked in. After entering, everyone exclaimed again because the inside was more like an immortal palace. All kinds of objects were exquisite and shining, as if it was a real dragon palace. Everyone walked in a long passage, and the walls on both sides were engraved with powerful sea beasts. Although they were only stone carvings, everyone could still feel a primordial aura. After carefully walking through the long passage, everyone stopped. Because in front of them was a real building complex. All kinds of pavilions, and squares were arranged in picturesque disorder. It was like a real city, but it was an undersea city. However, the only strange thing was that although it was no different from a city, there were no signs of life. It was as if it was a dead city. When everyone arrived at the real undersea city, they looked at everything around them and fell into deep shock. At this moment, Dugu Outyin said in a deep voice, "Elder Song, I seem to feel a weak spiritual power fluctuation." Hearing this, the older generation figures also frowned because Dugu Outyin could be said to be the strongest among the younger generation. Since he said there was a fluctuation, it should be true. Soon, under Dugu Outyin's reminder, the others also quickly sensed it. Elder Song also nodded slightly. Yes, there is indeed a spiritual power fluctuation. Lin Xian also sensed it, then raised his eyebrows because not only did he sense a spiritual power fluctuation, but he also sensed another kind of fluctuation. It was not that the others did not sense it because among these people, Lin Xian's soul force was probably the strongest. The dark red dragon also revealed a suspicious look. Obviously he also noticed the abnormality. Boy, be careful. I keep feeling that there is something unusual here. Hearing this, Lin Xian nodded slightly and secretly became vigilant. Then everyone set off. Their goal was, of course, the direction of the spiritual power fluctuation. They speculated that the spiritual power fluctuation was very likely to be from a treasure. Soon Lin Xian and the others set off again. This time, the older generation led the way while the younger disciples followed behind. However, compared to the previous passage, everyone's speed was obviously faster now. However, just as they passed through a pavilion, countless blue bubbles suddenly appeared around them. The surrounding seawater seemed to be boiling and trembling violently. Not good. Retreat. Up ahead, Elder Song suddenly shouted anxiously. Along with this voice, countless black shadows suddenly came from all directions. Like black lightning, they quickly stabbed at everyone. Fortunately, Lin Xian and the others were no ordinary people. Their reactions were fast enough and they quickly retreated. Dang dang dang. Clang, 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 clang. Those black shadows all pierced into the ground, making metallic sounds. Soon after, everyone discovered that the lightning-like black shadows were none other than spears. Those long hairs were more than 10 feet long and they were completely orchids. Strange patterns were carved on them, and there was a layer of light flowing rapidly on them. One could tell at a glance that they were filled with a ferocious aura. Seeing these blue spears, everyone's face darkened. Judging from the aura on them, these spears could definitely pose a threat to them. Lin Xian, on the other hand, frowned because he had sensed a similar aura from before. It seemed that the mysterious energy wave was the unknown threat before him. Sure enough, in the next moment, countless figures rushed from all directions. They held blue spears in their hands and had a fierce aura. Without a doubt, the sneak attack from before was launched by them. However, when the crowd saw those people, they were all stunned because they weren't human. They had the bodies of humans, but they had the heads of shrimps. Their arms were also covered in scales, making them look extremely strange. Damn, are they shrimp soldiers? A few disciples' eyes widened and almost bit their tongues. Elder Song quickly reminded them, "Be careful, these monsters are very strong." Before he finished his reminder, the shrimp soldiers on the opposite side launched a fierce attack. They all gave off blue devil chi and held icy cold spears as they rushed over. These shrimp soldiers were most likely from the devil race and had lived in the sea for a long time, so they were very familiar with the environment and were very agile. However, the disciples from the academy were different. After all, they were fighting underwater, and the seawater was not ordinary seawater. It also contained a terrifying desolate aura. As such, their combat strength was weaker than on the ground. As such, as soon as they started fighting, some disciples were sent flying. Luckily, there were many seniors in the group. They acted decisively and displayed their powerful combat strength, fighting against the shrimp soldiers. However, there was a limit to the seniors. Soon, a disciple was unable to dodge and was pierced by a blue spear, nailing him to the ground. Blood flowed out, dyeing the seawater red. The battle was very intense, but it ended quickly. After killing a few disciples, the shrimp soldiers quickly swam away and hid in the buildings in the distance. Seeing this, everyone's faces became gloomy. As soon as they entered the Crystal Palace, they were ambushed and some people even lost their lives. This was not a good sign for them. Everyone be careful. This place is more dangerous than we thought. Elder Song sighed. He had entered the remote sky secret realm twice, so he was very open-minded about life and death. One must know that the remote sky secret realm was not a good place. Death was a common occurrence. They were already very lucky that only a few people died in this battle. However, it was obvious that this was only the first wave of attack. Who knew if the shrimp soldiers hiding in the dark would attack again? Lin Xian's face was also solemn. Although the battle was short and he had killed a few shrimp soldiers, he was unable to turn the situation around. Luckily, they had more people on their side. If they really fought with their lives on the line, they would definitely be able to kill the shrimp soldiers. Next, under the lead of Elder Song and the rest, the group set off again. However, they did not walk for long before they met the shrimp soldiers again. This time, the number of shrimp soldiers was much more than before. It was almost the same as the number of disciples from the Immortal Martial Academy. Moreover, what made them even more shocked was that these shrimp soldiers were not only holding icy blue spears, but they were also wearing navy blue armor. They were like an army with a biting cold murderous aura. Chapter 1076. At this moment, an even larger shrimp soldier walked over from afar. He was clad in azure armor and carried a blue cape behind his back. He looked mighty and extraordinary, but his huge shrimp head made him look even weirder. The shrimp soldier who looked like a leader walked out and stared coldly at the front. Then, he mumbled something in an unknown language. However, this wasn't a human language, so the crowd couldn't understand him. Lin Xian frowned. He didn't know this language either. However, the crimson dragon beside him jumped up and said, "Fuck! You dare to be so arrogant in front of me? You must be tired of living." "You can understand him?" a disciple asked. They were already used to the crimson dragon's behavior. Lin Xian looked over and said, "Since you can understand him, then explain it to us." After hearing Lin Xian's words, Ruffian Dragon said angrily, "Damn it! A bunch of shrimp soldiers actually dared to threaten us and say that this place belongs to them. They want us to hand over our treasures and storage rings. Otherwise they'll kill us without mercy." After hearing this, the crowd's faces darkened. Ruffian Dragon was also furious. "Fuck. You're the first ones who dare to rob me. I'll let you know the consequences of robbing me." The Crimson Dragon roared in anger. After hearing this, the Immortal Martial Academy's disciples were also furious. They glared at the shrimp soldiers. A bunch of shrimp soldiers actually dared to rob them? How audacious. One had to know that they weren't here to be bullied. They were here to find treasures. "Tell them to scram. Otherwise they'll be killed without mercy," Elder Song said in a deep voice. After that, the Crimson Dragon spoke a bunch of gibberish. It was obvious that it passed the message to the shrimp soldiers. After hearing this, the shrimp soldiers were instantly enraged and started to roar. After hearing this, the leader of the shrimp soldiers had a sinister look on his face. The blue demonic chi on his body started to churn. It was obvious that he was enraged by the Crimson Dragon's words. In the next moment, he raised the blue spear in his hand and stabbed it toward Lin Xian and the others. Then he started to utter strange sounds. "Fuck. They're going to attack." The Crimson Dragon stomped his feet in anger. Sure enough, the surrounding prawn soldiers quickly waved their spears, forming a blue light that connected together like a wave, surging towards the group. The shrimp soldier leader also made his move. His terrifying strength shook the surroundings, and it wasn't any weaker than the older generations. Within the crowd, Dugu Outyin coldly snorted. His tall figure took a step forward. He quickly pulled out the long sword on his back and slashed forward. This sword was extremely sharp. It sliced apart the entire seawater, creating a vacuum. Soon their attacks collided, and a terrifying energy burst forth. The seawater was torn apart, and the buildings in the surroundings were blasted apart, forming countless powerful shockwaves that forced the students of the Immortal Martial Academy and the prawn soldiers to retreat. When they saw this scene, everyone was shocked and their hearts trembled. They never thought that the shrimp soldier leader would be so powerful, to actually be able to contend against Dugu Outyin. It could be said that the scene before them had exceeded their expectations. However, just when these people were in a daze, the prawn soldiers in the surroundings once again rushed over, piercing towards the students of the Immortal Martial Academy. This was the underwater world, and these prawn soldiers had a huge advantage in the sea. However, the students of the Immortal Martial Academy weren't to be trifled with. They were all geniuses and elites from various places, and their combat strength wasn't something that ordinary paragons could compare to. Therefore, when the two sides collided, a huge battle erupted once again. Elder Song roared in anger, and the spiritual energy in his body erupted, forming a huge shockwave that blasted out in all directions. At the same time he punched out and a group of prawn soldiers exploded. At this moment, this expert from the older generation was finally enraged. Lin Xian also pulled out the Lone Star sword and quickly waved it. A sword chi surged out, slicing apart the prawn soldiers in front of him. The Crimson Dragon roared in anger. A small prawn soldier actually dared to make a move against him. He was truly courting death. He couldn't tolerate it, so he waved his dragon claws and quickly formed inscriptions in the air, forming a formation that enveloped the surroundings. After that, the prawn soldiers in the surroundings started to fantasize and even started to kill each other. Although the Crimson Dragon hadn't recovered his strength yet, the power of his formation was extremely strange and couldn't be underestimated. They are demonic beasts and the suppression of their level is very deep. Therefore, if you want to subdue these prawn soldiers, you have to capture that prawn soldier leader first. The Crimson Dragon understood the matters of the demonic beasts very well, so he said in a clear voice. Hearing this, the sword in Dugu Aoyin's hand became even sharper, and even wanted to suppress that prawn soldier leader. At this moment, Elder Song also roared, and with a monstrous power, he condensed a huge palm of light in the air and grabbed at the prawn soldier leader. This palm's aura was extraordinary and extremely terrifying, and it directly enveloped the prawn soldier leader. Feeling this aura, the prawn soldier leader's expression changed drastically. In the end, he couldn't care about anything else and turned around to escape. Like a ray of blue light, the prawn soldier leader instantly disappeared on the spot and fled into the distance. The huge palm of light in the sky fell, overturning the entire seabed. However, the prawn soldier leader still managed to escape in the end. When the ordinary prawn soldiers in the surroundings saw this scene, they also went crazy and turned into blue light and fled into the distance. Damn little prawns, you can escape quite quickly. If you have the ability, come and fight with me for another 300 rounds. The Crimson Dragon looked at those fleeing figures and was extremely displeased. However, the disciples of the Immortal Martial Academy heaved a sigh of relief because these prawn soldiers were too ferocious and weren't any weaker than them. Fortunately, the prawn soldier leader had escaped, or else it would have been another fierce battle. However, it wasn't like they didn't have any gains, because Lin Xian had already captured 2 prawn soldiers. When the prawn soldier leader was escaping, he quickly executed the dragon capturing hands and caught the 2 prawn soldiers. After that, his gaze focused, and his soul spirit quickly entered the prawn soldier leader's mind to search his soul. Not long later, the 2 prawn soldiers foamed at the mouth and fell to the ground, twitching non-stop. On the other hand, Lin Xian heaved a sigh of relief. After that, he waved his hand and took out a scroll. He quickly opened it and pasted it on his forehead. His soul spirit gushed out crazily, and all the information that he had previously scouted was imprinted on it. Everyone looked over and waited patiently. Because they knew that Lin Xian was an alchemist, and his soul spirit was extremely powerful. Therefore they had a lot of information about Lin Xian. As expected, not long later Lin Xian opened his eyes again, and the scroll in his hand floated to everyone. Everyone stretched their necks and looked over. On the scroll there was a map. Seeing the densely packed buildings and passages, everyone gasped in surprise. This building was too vast, and if they didn't have a map, they probably wouldn't be able to walk out in a short period of time. But luckily Lin Xian knew how to search souls and obtained a map. This would be much more convenient for them in the future. The building in the center should be the Dragon Palace in the prawn soldier's mind. I even searched their souls and found out that in their minds, the Dragon Palace had long existed. And there's something similar to an inheritance inside that can increase the strength of these prawn soldiers. It said that in the past, there were prawn soldiers who entered the Dragon Palace and obtained great fortune. Lin Xian slowly said. This information was obtained from the 2 prawn soldiers' minds. Chapter 1077. On the other hand, Elder Song and the other elders frowned slightly. Lin Xian sighed, I don't know if it's the legendary Dragon Palace, but I know from the shrimp soldiers' minds that the Dragon Palace is their holy land. Also, the shrimp soldier clan isn't the only one in this sea. There are other sea demons as well. For example, the giant crab tribe, the Shen turtle tribe, and so on. Lin Xian's words made everyone frown because they realized that the sea was more dangerous than they had imagined. Just the shrimp soldiers were enough to put them in danger. Who knew what the other sea tribes were like? Needless to say, they were definitely not weaker than the shrimp soldiers. However, it was impossible for everyone to give up. After all, the building in the middle was called the Dragon Palace. Although they did not know if it was related to the legendary Dragon Palace, it was definitely not a simple place for the shrimp soldiers to worship. Moreover, everyone guessed that the spiritual energy fluctuation they sensed was probably coming from the Dragon Palace. After a heated discussion, everyone decided to go and take a look. They came here to look for opportunities, and opportunities usually contain great danger. They knew this better than anyone else. Therefore, when they heard the news about the Dragon Palace, they did not hesitate but nodded firmly and decided to go. Lin Xian naturally had no objections. He was also very curious about the so-called Dragon Palace. Even if these people did not go, he would find an excuse to go alone. However, it seemed that he did not need to waste so much effort. It was better to follow the team. With the result, the group did not delay any longer and hurried on. Due to Elder Song and the other seniors' strong combat power, the surrounding shrimp soldiers did not come up for a while. It seemed that these shrimp soldiers were also intelligent. They knew how to bully the weak and fear the strong. When they met a strong human, they did not dare to attack. Many seniors discussed quickly. They felt that the rules of the underwater world were no different from the rules on land. After quickly passing through the shrimp soldiers' area, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and hurried on. At this moment, there was a low vibration in front of them, and there was a surging spiritual energy fluctuation. There's a fight. Many disciples were shocked. The seniors frowned because they sensed that the sharp fluctuation belonged to a human's aura. Someone is ahead of us. The expressions of the elders turned ugly. Could it be someone from another sect? You want to get close to the Dragon Palace? That should be it. Let's go quickly. We can't let them succeed. The group of people was very anxious and could not help but speed up. Lin Xian also sent out his soul force, trying to sense the situation ahead. If they continued forward, they would leave the shrimp soldiers' territory and enter the giant crab tribe. The giant crab tribe was even more terrifying than the shrimp tribe. They were incomparably huge and powerful, as if they were the overlords of the sea. At this moment, the Cancer tribe was fighting with the human team. Furthermore, from the looks of it, the battle was extremely intense. The gigantic crab's pincers danced in the air as it launched a fierce attack at the humans. The human team was also very strange. Although they had human bodies, there were two illusory bird heads on both sides of their shoulders. They looked very ferocious. If someone was here, they would definitely scream because this group of humans was from the Divine Bird Palace. However, these people from the Divine Bird Palace were obviously met with great resistance. Although they were also demons, they were not good at attacking underwater. Therefore, at this moment, facing the attacks of the Cancer tribe, they could only passively defend and were unable to cause any destructive damage to the other party. Just as the Divine Bird Palace and the Cancer tribe were engaged in an intense battle, the Immortal Martial Academy team arrived at the back. So it's the Divine Bird Palace. Elder Song and the rest looked ahead and squinted their eyes. At the same time, they heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. Although the Divine Bird Palace was powerful, it was only a 6th grade sect. It was still slightly inferior to a king clan. On the other hand, they were a true king clan force. Therefore, if both parties were to fight for the Dragon Palace, they would have a higher chance of winning. On the other hand, Lin Xian frowned as he looked at those figures. To be honest, he did not have a good impression of the Divine Bird Palace. Previously, both parties were sworn enemies. Moreover, not long ago in Wind-Seeking City, those people from the Divine Bird Palace had also slandered him. It could be said that both parties were like fire and water. If he met them alone, Lin Xian would definitely not let them go. However, now that he was with the Immortal Martial Academy, it was not good for him to do anything out of line. However, he still snorted coldly. The Divine Bird Palace naturally saw the people from the Immortal Martial Academy. At the same time, they also saw Lin Xian. However, this was obviously not the time to bear grudges. Soon, an elder from the Divine Bird Palace shouted, "So it's the Immortal Martial Academy. You guys came at the right time. Quickly join forces with us and defeat the Cancer tribe." They were unable to fully utilize their advantage underwater. Therefore it was a headache to deal with the Cancer tribe. However, they did not expect to meet the people from the Immortal Martial Academy. Of course they would ask for help and join forces. As for seizing the Dragon Palace, they would talk about it after they defeated the Cancer tribe and were safe. Elder Song and the other elders discussed quickly and finally decided to lend a hand. This was because they were also unable to fully utilize their combat strength underwater. Moreover, from the scene just now, the Cancer tribe was even more difficult to deal with than the Shrimp tribe. Therefore they decided to join forces with the Divine Bird Palace. Speaking of which, the Immortal Martial Academy and the Divine Bird Palace were not easy to deal with. This was because in the matter of the War God Palace, the Divine Bird Palace supported the Vice Palace Lord. On the other hand, the people from the Immortal Martial Academy were unwavering in their support of the true Palace Lord of the War God Palace. Therefore both sides could be said to be opposing sides. However, they were now in the underwater world. In the face of such danger they could not care about anything else. They could only join forces first. Soon, Elder Song and the rest led the disciples from the Immortal Martial Academy up the stairs. However, this time Lin Xian did not rush up. Instead, his speed was very slow. He was even at the back of the group. He would not join forces with the people from the Divine Bird Palace. Although Lin Xian was not going to deal with them, it did not mean that he would help them. Following behind the group, Lin Xian acted like a bystander. At the same time, he expanded his soul force and quickly scanned the surroundings. The dark red divine dragon also followed beside him. He did not have a good impression of the three-headed birds. Woo woo woo. The little snow monkey also jumped out. Its big gem-like eyes looked around in a daze. In the next moment, it sat on Lin Xian's shoulder and started to take out spiritual fruits to eat. Lin Xian was having a leisurely time. However, the situation at the front was not. The Cancer tribe was extremely powerful. Therefore both sides were going all out. Chapter 1078. This slash was extremely sharp. Moreover, the seniors were very experienced. Every slash was able to hit the vital points of the giant scorpion tribe. They would either severely injure the giant scorpion tribe or kill it directly. Instead, the confidence of the Divine Bird Palace was greatly boosted. One of the elders was dressed in purple, and even his hair was purple. He shouted coldly. The two bird heads on his shoulders became more solid. At the same time, streaks of lightning appeared on his body, making him look like a thunder god. With a wave of his hand, chains of lightning crisscrossed. The crackling sound spread throughout the sea. In an instant, the surrounding area became a sea of lightning. Countless streaks of purple lightning struck in all directions. The two major powers joined forces and attacked with all their might. Soon, the giant scorpion tribe was forced to retreat. This time, the elder from the Divine Bird Palace said loudly, "Everyone, why don't we kill our way through in one go?" "All right." Elder Song and the rest nodded. They had the same idea too. This was an excellent opportunity for them to join forces and unleash their full strength. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the Immortal Martial Academy to get through the giant scorpion tribe alone. Seeing that the Immortal Martial Academy had agreed, the Divine Bird Palace was excited. They quickly said, the giant scorpion tribe was extremely strong and hard to deal with. However, their speed shouldn't be too fast. We should charge with all our might and leave them far behind. We just need to leave this place quickly. Hearing this, the elders and the rest nodded. They also realized that the giant scorpion tribe was extremely strong. However, their agility was much weaker than the prawn tribe. Therefore, they quickly agreed to this suggestion. The two sides joined forces and sped up. The elders opened up a path in front, forming a powerful combat force. They forcefully opened up a bloody path through the giant scorpion tribe. Behind them, the giant scorpion tribe roared crazily. However, their huge bodies were greatly hindered by the sea. Their speed was far slower than Lin Xian and the rest. Therefore, they could only watch as they left. They couldn't catch up at all. After successfully leaving the giant scorpion tribe's territory, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Many of them patted their chests in excitement because they were one step closer to the Dragon Palace. Lin Xian followed behind the group without any expression. According to his soul force, there were other sea demons behind the giant scorpion tribe. It wouldn't be easy to get close to the Dragon Palace. However, at this moment, the dark red divine dragon was extremely excited. "Brat, do you feel it? This power is very strong." Lin Xian nodded. Indeed, he felt an obscure yet powerful force coming from the front. Needless to say, it came from the Dragon Palace. At this moment, Zero spoke for the first time. "What a powerful force. When Lin Xian heard this, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "Zero, do you need this power?" "I don't need it for now, but I think it's better to give it to you. Don't worry, I will fully support you this time. Your current strength is too weak. You can't leave this world at all. You have to quickly increase your strength and reach Alchemy Ancestor as soon as possible." With Zero's assurance, Lin Xian's lips curled into a smile. He knew that even if the two sides were to fight, his chances of winning were higher. One had to know that Zero could control the Thousand Beast Cauldron, which was an Earth-ranked treasure. Although it could only release a trace of its power, it was not something an ordinary warrior could contend with. Just as Lin Xian and Zero were talking, Elder Song and the Elder of the Divine Bird Palace were also communicating quickly. Finally, they decided to set off again. The Xian Turtle clan is in front. Their defense is even more terrifying than the Giant Crab clan. So, try not to get entangled with them. Hearing Elder Song's words, everyone nodded quickly to show that they understood. Then, everyone moved forward carefully and entered the territory of the Xian Turtle clan. Not long after, they found a Xian Turtle. This Xian Turtle was as tall as a person. It carried a huge turtle shell on its back. It glowed with a faint green light and was covered with various patterns. When everyone saw this Xian Turtle, their eyes lit up. The two elders and disciples in the front row quickly surrounded the Xian Turtle and beat it up. However, what shocked everyone was that the Xian Turtle's limbs and head shrunk and hid inside the green turtle shell. But it didn't dare to do so. It actually blocked all the attacks. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. That kind of attack could tear apart a 4th-level honorable realm in an instant, but the Xian Turtle could withstand it. It was too shocking. Lin Xian was also shocked. He did not expect the Xian Turtle to be so strong. It was beyond his expectations. If the Xian Turtle's shell was used as armor, it would be extremely hard. In front, the Xian Turtle took advantage of everyone's shock and quickly fled into the distance. The elders sighed and did not chase after it. However, a disciple of the Divine Bird Palace revealed a ferocious smile and quickly chased after it. He wanted to catch the Xian Turtle and use its shell as a defensive armor. In that case, his defense would be greatly improved and even surpass a warrior of the same level. However, seeing this scene, the Elder of the Divine Bird Palace's expression changed. He quickly shouted for the disciple to return. The disciple was also stunned, but the greed in his heart made him continue to chase. In front, the Xian Turtle sensed this scene and was very angry. It let out a whimper. Then, it suddenly turned its head, stretched out its head, and bit the neck of the Divine Bird Palace disciple. Crack! Blood burst out and dyed the sea red. A head fell to the ground. The Xian Turtle let out another whimper and swam into the distance. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked and their scalps went numb. They did not expect the Xian Turtle's attack to be so terrifying. Damn it, the Xian Turtles had insane defense and terrifying attack. They were simply invincible. Indeed, they were too difficult to deal with. They were even more terrifying than those giant crabs. No wonder they were so close to the Dragon Palace. They were indeed a powerful race. By now, everyone had realized that this area had a strict hierarchy. The closer the race was to the Dragon Palace, the stronger they were. However, no matter how powerful they were, it could not stop them from wanting to enter the Dragon Palace. Therefore, they reorganized the team and set off forward. Not long after, they encountered another Xian Turtle and a great battle broke out. Just like that, everyone moved forward little by little. Lin Xian stayed at the back and did not make a move. Because with his powerful soul power, he sensed that a powerful Xian Turtle was coming this way. Sure enough, not long after, the seawater in front of them fluctuated and formed an undercurrent that gathered in their direction. A terrifying and powerful force quickly surged over. The Xian Turtle was very terrifying. Its body was not very big, only about 2 meters. However, the demonic aura on its body was monstrous. It had long surpassed a 4th-layer venerable and was even close to a 6th-layer venerable. Obviously, he was a 5-star demon general at the 5th heavenly layer of the Exalt realm. Chapter 1079. Although they were 6th heaven venerables, they did not dare to be careless at this moment because the other party's defense was too strong. Even they might not be able to break through it. This wasn't good news for them. Moreover, not only was there this huge divine turtle around, but there were also other black turtles that were quickly gathering. An elder of the Bird Craftsman Palace attacked the huge black turtle. The black turtle leader turned around and faced the crowd with its huge turtle shell. Soon, the beam of light hit the turtle shell. Otherwise, it would have spat out strange syllables from its mouth. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the 2-meter-tall turtle shell once again emitted a terrifying light. The patterns on it became clear and emitted a strange power. Bang! The light palm from the elder of the Divine Bird Palace was quickly reflected back. Moreover, the power was even stronger than before. The elder of the Divine Bird Palace was sent flying by the reflected light palm and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Seeing this scene, everyone was completely stunned. What was going on? They had never seen anything like this before. In the end, a disciple screamed, "Fuck, rebound, this guy can actually rebound." Hearing this, everyone's expressions turned ugly. They did not expect the Black Turtle leader to have such a unique skill. It could actually rebound their attacks. A few elders did not believe it and quickly tried to test it. In the end, their attacks were all reflected by the huge turtle shell. Seeing this, everyone's expressions turned gloomy and ugly, because they realized that they could not do anything to this powerful black turtle. However, they also had an advantage. Their only advantage was that they had more people. As long as they surrounded the black turtle and attacked it head-on, it would be fine. Elder Song and the elders of the Divine Bird Palace discussed and decided to attack. However, before they could do anything, a terrifying and deep voice suddenly came from the depths of the sea. Accompanying it was an aura that made one's heart tremble. One of them was a monstrous demonic aura, as if a peerless demon with horns had awakened. Moreover, what shocked everyone was that the demonic aura carried the same aura as the black turtles in front of them. Needless to say, it was a powerhouse of the Xian Turtle clan. The other one was a human powerhouse because the sharp aura was very pure. However, it was extremely terrifying and seemed to be stronger than Elder Song and the others. This aura was very close to a seventh heaven venerable. Many people exclaimed when they sensed the situation in front of them. Elder Song and the others also frowned. They did not expect such a powerhouse to appear in front of them. This was an existence that was even stronger than them. Moreover, what made them even more worried was that they did not know which faction the other party was from. Lin Xian also frowned because he did not expect such a powerful figure to appear at this time. Another thing was that he didn't expect the Xian Turtle clan to have such a terrifying expert. Fortunately, these two terrifying figures seemed to be fighting at this moment. The Black Tortoise leader, who was more than 2 meters tall, heard this voice and his expression changed drastically. He let out a long howl and quickly swam away with the surrounding black tortoises, as if he was going to provide support. And the elders of the Celestial Martial Academy and the Divine Bird Palace. This was because they couldn't take down these black tortoises in a short period of time. Moreover, the two auras in front of them were too terrifying, causing his heart to palpitate. Lin Xian's heart skipped a beat. He used the Blood Shadow Doppelganger to leave a doppelganger behind while his real body used the heaven-changing technique to blend into the sea and quickly followed. The dark red divine dragon and the snow-white monkey were also with him. Everyone was paying attention to the situation in front of them. Lin Xian was at the back of the group, so no one noticed this abnormality. The Xian Turtle leader turned and entered a building, disappearing in front of everyone's eyes. However, just as he turned around, a deep dragon roar suddenly sounded, causing his body to tremble. At the same time, a strong sense of fear rose from the bottom of his heart. It was not over yet. A white furry ball suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. In the next moment he saw a furry paw slap his face. Then he fainted. As if he was drunk, he could not exert any strength at all. Now he could not move his body. His head was dizzy and his soul power was sluggish. However, at this moment, a black cauldron appeared in front of him. All kinds of birds and beasts flew around it quickly as if they were real. Thousand Beast Cauldron, Soul Control. Accompanied by a deep and cold voice, a black light shot out from the Thousand Beast Cauldron and entered between the Xian Turtle leader's eyebrows. Feeling this inexplicable power enter his mind, the Xian Turtle leader's body trembled. He revealed a ferocious expression as if he wanted to resist. However, he underestimated this black light. This was the Thousand Life Cauldron, the power of an Earth-tier artifact. He could not resist at all. After a moment of stalemate, he stopped in place with a dull look in his eyes. Seeing this, Lin Xian also breathed a sigh of relief. The reason he took action was because he learned about the Thousand Beast Cauldron from his conversation with Zero. It was not just a cauldron for alchemy. It had a more magical effect. That was beast control. After Zero's explanation, Lin Xian finally understood why this black cauldron was called the Thousand Beast Cauldron. It was because the Thousand Beast Cauldron could control all kinds of powerful beasts in ancient times. The black light just now was cast by Lin Xian with Zero's help. It was a kind of spell to control beasts. Of course, it consumed a lot of his soul power. However, seeing the scene before him, he felt that it was all worth it. Kneel. Lin Xian looked at the Shen turtle leader in front of him and said coldly. In the next moment, the Shen turtle leader suddenly knelt down very respectfully. Seeing this, Lin Xian smiled. As expected of the thousand-beast cauldron, it was really mysterious. All right, get up and do what you wanted to do before. Lin Xian waved and said in a deep voice. In the next moment, the Shen turtle leader quickly stood up. His eyes regained their clarity. He looked deeply at Lin Xian with infinite respect. Soon he swam into the distance. Lin Xian was not worried at all. This was because the thousand-beast cauldron was very magical. The black light just now was one of its moves called soul control. All the demonic beasts that were under this kind of soul control would listen to Lin Xian's orders. Moreover, their behavior was exactly the same as before, so no one would be able to discover them. Therefore Lin Xian was very relieved. Looking at the disappearing figure, Lin Xian smiled with satisfaction. Then he quickly returned to the team with the dark red divine dragon and the snow-white little monkey. After returning silently, Lin Xian recalled his blood shadow doppelganger and quickly looked around. He found that the surrounding disciples were nervously watching the situation in front of them. No one noticed his abnormality. Chapter 1080. Terrifying sounds could be heard from time to time in front of them, accompanied by terrifying shockwaves of energy. It was obvious that the two powerful beings were fighting. Suddenly, a furious roar came from the front. Then everyone saw a mountain-like figure appear quickly. The figure was too terrifying. It was like a huge mountain, and it carried monstrous demonic chi that swept out in all directions. It's the Shen Turtle Clan's expert. Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Fortunately, they didn't follow them. Otherwise they would be in danger now. The Shen turtle was too terrifying. None of them could resist it. However, after the huge Shen turtle appeared, another strange sound came from the front. A void sky eye suddenly appeared in the sky, and it looked down on the world with a cold expression. The eye was very illusory, and it carried an aura that made one's heart palpitate. When the two illusory figures appeared, Elder Song and the others in the distance were immediately shocked. They even stopped in their tracks and looked ahead with a solemn expression. Some of the weaker disciples had already begun to tremble. The Shen Turtle Clan's expert was too terrifying. Its mountain-like body began to move, and it launched fierce attacks. Every attack could tear apart heaven and earth, and it carried a supreme aura as it bombarded the front. Fortunately, they were at the bottom of the sea, and the surrounding seawater could reduce the pressure. Otherwise, just this energy alone would definitely be able to destroy a city. Moreover, it would be a super city. However, the human figure was not afraid in the face of such powerful attacks. The void sky eye flickered above. At the same time, the human figure below was also releasing dazzling light. Relying on this light, everyone realized that the human figure was actually a woman. Although they couldn't see her face clearly, her exquisite figure was obvious. The woman waved her jade-like hands, and mysterious seals appeared one after another to control the void sky eye above her. Then, the void sky eye above her released a silver-white light that slashed forward like a sharp blade. Wherever the silver light passed, the seawater was split open, and a huge vacuum appeared. However, this wasn't shocking because Elder Song and the others could also split open the seawater. What caused them to be truly shocked was that when the silver ray of light struck the enormous black tortoise shell, it actually pierced through it. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. All of them widened their eyes in disbelief. After all, that was the Shen Turtle Clan. Moreover, it was an expert from the Shen Turtle Clan. The other party's defense was definitely extremely strong. Perhaps even a seventh heaven venerable might not be able to break through it. However, at that moment, his opponent had actually managed to blast open that sturdy turtle shell and injure that expert from the Shen Turtle Clan. This was simply inconceivable. Thinking of this, everyone looked at the virtual sky eye in the sky with terrified expressions. What exactly was that eyeshadow? How could it be so powerful? The Shen Turtle Clan's expert roared furiously after being pierced by the light. His voice shook the heavens as he launched a fierce counterattack. Boundless seawater gathered and surged forward like a ferocious water dragon. In an instant, the space in front of him was completely covered. The water dragon roared, bringing with it a world-destroying aura as it rushed forward. This moment was truly too terrifying. However, the human woman only coldly snorted. Her entire body blossomed with dazzling light. Then she once again activated the void sky eye in the sky, forming a huge vortex above her. In the next instant, the seawater in the sky was sucked into the vortex and entered the illusory eye. It absorbed such a powerful attack. It actually absorbed such a powerful attack. In the distance, Elder Song and the others were also stunned when they saw this scene. Lin Xian's expression was also grave as he stared intently ahead. This was because the void sky eye in the sky gave him a very familiar feeling. However, he couldn't recall it at the moment. In front of him, the void sky eye opened and formed a devouring power that frantically devoured the endless seawater. However, although it was able to devour most of it, some of it still overflowed and blasted onto the human woman. Instantly, the human woman was forced back a few steps. Damn it. If it weren't for the fact that the void sky eye consumes so much energy, I would have killed this bastard long ago. The human woman muttered to herself. This scene had already stunned Elder Song and the others. Such a powerful attack had only forced her back a few steps. She wasn't injured at all. This was simply too inconceivable. Who was this woman? How could she be so powerful at such a young age? Could she be a disciple of a sovereign clan? But that shouldn't be the case. The martial arts she used were completely different from those sovereign clans' martial arts. Elder Song and the others discussed among themselves, their faces filled with confusion. However, Lin Xian was extremely shocked. With his outstanding soul power, he finally saw the other party's appearance clearly. However, after taking a look, he was immediately stunned. This was because he recognized this woman. It could be said that he was extremely familiar with her. This was because this human woman was none other than Zhao Shui, who had left the Xia country with him back then. However, he didn't expect her strength to increase by leaps and bounds after not seeing her for such a long time. She had reached an unbelievable level. Moreover, he also recognized the void sky eye. It was a stone eyeball that Zhao Shui had obtained back then. He had also studied it before. The shape of the void sky eye was exactly the same as that stone eyeball. This was why he felt that the void sky eye looked familiar when he saw it earlier. At this moment, Elder Song and the others were about to step forward and provide support. "Friend, do you need help?" Elder Song asked loudly. "No need." Zhao Shui's cold gaze swept over Elder Song and the others. Then, she coldly turned her head and began to fight with the Xian turtle expert again. After that, Zhao Shui waved her jade-like hand and controlled the void sky eye to shoot out a shocking ray of light that pierced through the Xian turtle expert's body. This time, the ray of light was even more terrifying than before. It directly pierced through the Xian turtle expert's body and almost pierced through his heart. The Xian turtle expert trembled with fear and didn't dare to continue fighting. His body turned into a ray of light and fled into the distance. Zhao Shui didn't chase after him because the void sky eye consumed a lot of energy. "May I ask for your name?" "Which sect do you come from?" Elder Song quickly asked after he had finished speaking. This was because they were too shocked. They had never heard of someone with such strength at such a young age. "Zhao Shui from the Void Sky School." Her voice was ice cold as she quickly swept her gaze over Elder Song and the others. Although Zhao Shui was powerful, Elder Song and the others weren't weak either. Moreover, there were many of them. Their strength couldn't be ignored. Zhao Shui, Dugu Outyin, Li Yunfei and the others whispered, remembering this name. The eyes of the Divine Bird Palace's disciples also lit up as they stared at Zhao Shui. There was nothing they could do. She was too beautiful. However, they had never heard of the Void Sky School. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.